Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum. Now, we are in the interim stages between two debates, so I'm going to pass over to the live panel and you can enjoy the dulcet tones of whoever is in there while I set up for the next live show.
He almost kind of made fun of the notion of a force interacting between the Earth and the Moon, or between objects. It was almost like, yeah, of course it's imaginary. We know that. It's not real. It's literally not a force. But yeah, when we're doing the mathematics, we can act like it is. I'm like, what? What am I listening to? Oh my God.
This is devastating for the ball earthers, because the effect of it is when Rumpus claims that weight is a force, because he always says density is not a force, weight is a force. Force has got weight has got little g in it. Well, if gravity is not a force, that means weight's not a force. That means we can actually use weight in its normal context, because mathematically speaking, it's not a force. Because Musser literally says it.
Literally says it's literally not a force.
Nonsense, isn't it? It just
I won't stop saying this for a while, guys, so I'm sorry.
It's not literally a force.
They got two options.
Think of it as
now.
a force.
Either throw out George Musser, they have to put him to the wolves and be like, yo, kill him. He's saying the wrong stuff. Or what do? Or you admit that gravity's not a force. Like they are.
We need to play this over and over again. We need to remind people that little g is not a force, gravity is not a force, because he said it. Now, he already said it in his article, right? But if he's gone on camera and said it in front of everyone, we need to remind people that gravity is not a force, because it is the deflection in space-time, right? So anytime there's any conversation to do with gravity, Cavendish is out the window, because there's not a mass-attractive mass. Even if that did happen, it's not gravity doing it, someone else is doing it. It literally kills Cavendish.
Oh, this is a nice turnaround from the last show where you're going, how can they call this a win? I can't quite believe it. To, we need to rub this right in their face, don't we? Yes, Anthony. Yes. I'm very pleased you've had a 180-degree turnaround, finally.
I'm just realizing the bigger picture here. And the bigger picture isn't down to this. The bigger picture is that weight isn't a force after all, the way Rumpus tells us. Cavendish is out the window, because even if it was something causing those masses to attract masses, it definitely can't be gravity, because gravity is not a force. So someone else is doing it, electromagnetic or otherwise. Who cares what it is? You can all spitball about it. It might be something else, but it's definitely not gravity causing it, because Musser said so. So Cavendish is out the window, always.
All out the window. What's gravity?
I know, but what I'm saying is, I'm not talking to you, Nathan. I'm talking to the newbies that are not necessarily familiar with Cavendish or whatever, because it comes up in conversation all the time.
Even that little 150 millionth bullshit. It's imaginary.
Yeah. I got a comment on one of the things the other day, the thread saying, why is no other flat earther arguing supporting you on the 50 million to 1? I said, I don't need flat earthers to support me on it. It's written by Cavendish himself. And he's like, nobody else supports it.
No,
like,
there's a subtle nuance to why we're not supporting you in that. What you're doing is you're using a hostile witness and his own narrative of bullshit against him. Well, we're not trying to run that narrative, so obviously the ballers are going to be talking about Cavendish and what he's proving or disproving with his man-made phenomena that he's got with his balls. You, on the other hand, are taking one part of his extraction from his bullshit balls and saying, look, he's even saying it's only a 50 millionth. Well, that's absolutely correct in terms of the bullshit he asserts. But just because somebody comes along and within their double-speak nonsense about unicorn farts has an error within their narrative, it's not necessarily the case that I'm going to go around going, look, there's an error in this narrative, because it's not my narrative and I'm not trying to punt it. So you'll hear that narrative of Cavendish being punted by the ballers. Anthony's just very cleverly using it as a hostile witness to ridicule the source of information in the first instance. Well, if you want to say that the force is gravity, The subtle nuance, I'll get to the point, is that most of these people think incorrectly that everything is gravity. You know, if something goes down, that all of it's attributable to gravity. Well, no, within the bullshit narrative itself, it's explaining that 1/50 millionth of the object's own mass is attributable to gravity. That's what Cavendish or Reverend John Mitchell experiment is apparently quantified as by Cavendish himself. Now, we don't believe Cavendish. We know they've not got a natural phenomena. We know it's not science, so we're never going to be punting this narrative. It's a very nuanced argument that Anthony's got from a huge amount of research. You know, credit to him, because you can take apart the narrative based on people's ignorance of their own narrative. That's where this rather nuanced argument comes in. So if people aren't going, well, why isn't any other flat earther begging the question of gravity and talking about a 50 millionth to one? Well, what's gravity? That's where our argument ends and begins. There is no phenomena. It's nothing. It's a mathematical construct in pseudo-Riemannian force space that describes the bending of space-time. It's utter horseshit. So we're not ever going to be talking about some outmoded, outdated narrative like Reverend John Mitchell / Cavendish balls and their nonsense that's superseded by new nonsense with its four-dimensional mathematics. So it's so complex in terms of how their narrative is explained and how they don't understand it, that Anthony will get a win with that argument, providing people start asserting incorrectly that gravity is the entirety of what you can attribute things doing whatever they claim gravity is doing. Well, it's not, according to Newtonian mechanics, Einstein aside. You've got this experiment, which it's not, made by Reverend John Mitchell and Cavendish, and the extrapolation from that nonsense gives you the 50 million to one.
Hey, Nathan, is it possible? I mean, it's your show, you decide. Can we just play the first 9 minutes of this? Because when they say it, okay, well, can you play another segment?
No,
then?
what we will do between hopefully Anthony and myself, you're welcome to join. You know, I'll send out the invite, 10th man. Is go through it in a methodical way. So no, I'm not just going to play 10 minutes of his video and then laugh at it at the end. But with timestamps, we'll go through it and systematically pull it apart. So in the past, John has gone through Mary Schweitzer's nonsense in a similar way, and there was in overall amount, it was a huge chunk that I played of that discussion. But each and every section was analysed methodically. So it absolutely you're covered by fair use because you're analysing it. Yes, you're going to use a fair bit if you're analysing a lot of it. So, but I'm happy with that. But just to play it, no, definitely not.
Okay, I just needed to know the protocol. But that will work even better, because when he starts talking after all the introductions are done and he brings up Sleeping Warrior for the first time, he sets the stage for George Musser to clobber Sleeping Warrior, and then George Musser ends up clobbering him.
Yeah, that's the bit that I'm like, that's where he's stolen the car, parked it back on the drive, and patted him on the shoulder as he's handing him back the car keys. And I'm like, he doesn't realise that's what's happened. But just to let you guys know, I've asked Rumpus would he join the show. What I'm going to do, I'll just do full disclosure for you guys. If he does join, just let me kill this cunt. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to say to him, Musa says that gravity is not a force. But you always say that weight's a force, density is not. Well, in weights, there's little g. So how can weight be a force if little g is in there? And Musa says that gravity is not a force. And
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. Now, we are joined by 10th Man, Sleeping Warrior, Travis, Right the Hand, Physics Warrior, Paul, Michael, Chocolate Sane, Arwin, and that's pretty much it. Very good to have you all.
Hello.
Greetings, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What do you do?
Not literally hello, but hello.
Hello.
Hello. Let's rattle through housekeeping, hopefully relatively quickly. Any signs of Earth curvature?
There's no signs of Earth curvature, but you can act as though there is.
Don't make me laugh on this housekeeping. I want to do it quickly.
No proof, Nathan.
God. Don't.
I presuppose so.
Oh no.
I think Riley should answer all the questions
Oh, it's
since he
gone
did
wrong already.
such a major victory.
Yeah.
Right, it's just I can feel the tears coming already. Right. Any signs of axial rotation?
There are no signs of axial rotation, but you can think of axial rotation as though it's there.
Okay.
Only when I'm drunk.
What about the distance to the sun?
There's no evidence that the sun is a real tangible object, but you can think of it as though it's a real physical tangible object.
Sweet.
It doesn't exist.
Good answer. Good answer. What about scientific evidence of gravity? Any of that?
Gravity. What? Quote, gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. George Musser, 2019.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
There is no evidence of a molten iron core, but you can think of being real evidence for it.
Nice now. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container?
Yes, unicorn farts.
Other than unicorn farts?
There is no evidence that you can have gas pressure next to a vacuum, but you can pretend as though there is.
It's not literal, but you can think of it as actually existing. That's lovely.
Yep.
Okay, what was where were we? Any evidence of the R value?
There is no evidence of R, but you can act as though there is.
R.
Okay, that's pretty much it. So
Just
just
you
for
can
the,
doesn't mean you should.
just for the audience's information, some of the answers were referencing George Musser and his double speak nonsense over on Fight the Flat Earth channel. So check out Fight the Flat Earth, go over there, subscribe, check out his video, give it a like. But he managed
Shout out
to
retracted. Shout out retracted.
look. I just want to get something clear, right? When it comes to other YouTubers, and that's what I view Craig as in this regard, he's another YouTuber who is working hard and has had a good guest. In that regard, don't retract this shout out. Go over to Fight the Flat Earth channel, check it out, like his video, enjoy the content. Thank you, Craig, for producing that content. I am looking forward to watching it. I don't think I've ever watched your channel, but I will be. I may even subscribe depending on how hysterically you embarrass yourself.
Hey Nathan, we can act as though it's not been retracted. No, we can act as though it's not been retracted. No, I've messed it all up now.
It's not retracted, but you can think
Yeah,
of
the
that.
shout out retracted has not been retracted, but you can think of it as been retracted.
Excellent.
I'll be right back, guys.
Wow, this is getting very confusing.
That was
We're
said by
just
a
trying to
scientist.
show. We're just trying to show the audience how it's double speak.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing with double speak, Arwin. It's very confusing.
I'd like to shout out to Gem Panda's Discord.
That's definitely getting a retracted shout out.
Definitely retract.
I'm fighting for that Discord. Gem's doing a pretty good work on that. It's kind of tough, but
You're joking. Last time I went in there, I lasted about 15 minutes before he interrupted me like 4 times. And the final interruption was because I accidentally said astrology instead of astronomy. Like that's the biggest misspeak ever. And he had to jump in when I told him like 3 more times, please don't interrupt me. Let me get my words out. Then you can respond. And I accidentally said astrology. Wow.
he
You
did
mean
apologize.
literally,
He did
literally or
apologize.
non-literally?
Yeah, it was literally.
Yeah, I
Well, he
remember
did
it as
apologize.
You said it, but you can take it as if you didn't.
I like Nathan's comment here of going and subscribing. I'm going to go subscribe to his channel because he's doing more hurt on the ballers than we are.
Is there a link
I
to
don't know.
that
I don't know
channel?
about that. Hold on. You're saying he's doing more damage than we are? Come on. Hey,
Well,
Michael. How you
after
doing?
after this show, everything he said prior to this show, you can just flush down the toilet. This
Yeah,
was his. This was his coup de grace to take down Sleeping Warrior, and it just took him down.
Yeah, I'll back that up. Like, I want to thank Craig, Fight the Flat Earth, for bringing Mr. George Musser on to explain to us how gravity is not a force multiple times, guys. Multiple. So next time you ballers decide to say, oh, gravity is a force, you might want to listen to that because that was presented by the one and only Fight the Flat Earth.
Listen, I need to report back here. I did say in the interval that Rumpus was due to come on, right? Get this, right? I've asked him to come on, and he said, but Nathan will just meet me, and I have promised to go on Jose's for the first time for a week in 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, no. And this is my response. I said, no, okay, no worries. We have a weight issue, though. Weighting, like, as in weight as a force. And his response was, I will be making a refutation video of your density and gravity confusions very soon. I said, that's not the point. The point is that you say weight is a force, density is not a force. And then he says, that is the point. Weight is a force, density is not. Now, this is where Rumpus has moved the goalposts. Has anybody ever heard Rumpus describe this, what he normally says in this context? Nathan, prick your ears up. So his point, he says, that is the point. Weight is a force, density is not. Gravitational force is, of course, a manifestation of the curvature of space-time, a fictitious force, but it manifests itself as real as any force in reality. Has he ever said that before?
Well, he's saying it's a fictitious force.
But it manifests itself as a real force in reality.
Well, a
Have you
fictitious...
ever heard Rumpus describe it like that?
It's not a way of saying it's aberration.
Hold on. So a fictitious force is like an apparent force. So the Coriolis force isn't actually a force. Yeah? In the same way. It's not actually deviating. It just looks like it is. Not deviating. So he's saying it's not a force? Fictitious force. Not a force. Well done, Rumpus.
Yeah.
So not a force. Yeah, that's what we're saying.
So I've just said, ha ha ha, you are wrong, dude. Double speaking, pseudoscience, bullshit, wanker. Because that is what Rumpus is. And all of these pretender clowns. John is absolutely right when he calls them all pretender clowns. Because gravity's not a force.
Why did you
But
ask
they all
Rumpus?
count for it in the maths, don't they?
Quote, air is not the atmosphere. Why would you ask that idiot?
Because he's the one that's, you know, like, right, I always get criticized by people on their side for not listening, or for, I've heard Rumpus say things like, you tell him what the answer is, and a week later he's forgotten it. It's not like a week later I've forgotten it. It's a week later his position is not changed because you haven't presented enough evidence to persuade me that your correct answer is actually correct. So I revert back to the previous point, which is you haven't proven your point, and he thinks that means I've forgotten. But what I do remember is when Rumpus says things like, weight is a force, density is not a force. Well, if weight is a force, and weight's got little g in it in the arithmetic to give it the force status, but you've got George Musser telling you that gravity is not actually a force, then weight can't be a force, can it? Because it's got gravitational in it and little g in it, and that's what makes it a force. But if Musser says it's not a force, it's something else, then weight can't be a force. So when I say in the past that weight's been hijacked, the colloquial term weight, that we all know what we mean when we say it, science has hijacked it with little g. That's true. But if little g is not actually a force, then that means that Rumpus is wrong when he said in the past, weight is a force, density is not a force, because weight's not actually a force, is it? So in other words, what that now means is, the Cavendish experiment's out the window, because even if mass does attract mass, it's not gravity that's doing it, because gravity is not a force. So let's just give them, for arguments, just for the sake of making my point here, let's give them that weight does attract mass. Let's give them that the Cavendish experiment, that's not really an experiment, let's just give them that does do what they claim it does. Gravity is not a force, so it can't be gravity causing it, because Georgie Musser said so. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it, because whatever Cavendish is doing or not doing, it ain't proving gravity, because gravity's not a force, is it? So let's not forget that anymore. Let's start putting Cavendish in the bin where it belongs and reminding everybody it's the curvature of space-time and not an imaginary force, because Georgie Musser snapped the wand in two and Craig thinks he was holding his willy. Ah.
Just remember, the not actual size of the sun won't change. It's non-actual size from not actual position as it moves through the sky.
Come on, Nathan, say that sentence for 10th man.
Well, no, it's their question, isn't it? Their question is, why does the not actual size of the sun not change its not actual size as it moves from its not actual position? So they would say something like, why doesn't the sun change its angular size throughout the day? Well, when we're arguing on the ground about curve calculations and they're using actual sizes that don't change with distance, they're fixed regardless of how far they are, because it's an actual size, feet and inches, meters. Well, things do change angular size as you get further away from them. That's our argument on the ground. Well, what's angular size? Not actual size. So when they're talking about the angular size of the sun and why it would or wouldn't change, they're saying, why does the not actual size of the sun not change its not actual size as it moves from its not actual position, because the sun has an apparent position. So it's not where you actually see it. It's a not actual position. It's an apparent position. So as it moves throughout the day through its not actual positions towards the horizon. And what's the horizon again? Something that's also not actual. So it descends the question of why does the angular size of the sun not change? Who cares? What do you think that proves, you bonehead?
Can I just also correct the original assertion?
I love it.
Let me just correct the original assertion, right? When the ballers claim that the angular size of the sun does not change throughout the day, Dave Marsh has measured it with a solar filter on, and the angular size of the sun does change throughout the day. They tell you it doesn't, in the same way that they say that the Etvos effect is a thing. But the actual evidence does not agree with the assertion. The angular size of the sun does change throughout the day. It does change.
So the actual evidence shows that the not actual size of the sun does change its not actual size as it moves throughout the day. This is all very interesting.
Yeah. So, and let's not forget that angular size is a sum, right? It's not simply a measurement. You need to know the distance to have the phrase angular size. Otherwise, you've just got an angle. And I got this. This is the first time I really got gaslighted. When we were talking about angular size, they were ignoring the maths and telling me that I'd misunderstood it and laughing at me. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? It's literally in front of your nose there. You need to know the distance. It's the apparent size from a distance, a given set distance. That bit needs to be there. And they're all telling me I've got this wrong, and they're laughing at me and trying to make out that I'm stupid. And I doubled down on it, and I said, and I'm doubling again, and tripling and quadrupling down. Angular size is a sum. It's not just a measurement. So what they then do is say, it's not a sum, is it, Riley? Because sum is plus, right? And what I mean when I say it's a sum, it's an arithmetic, right? It's a formula. It's something else that's more than just measuring the angle. And they focus on that word sum because it's dead simple for us to understand the concept. And they say they try and use that against me to discredit the point I'm making, but it doesn't work. The reality is you need to know the distance to get the angular size or the apparent size. If you don't know the distance, you've got an infinitely variable scale where that sun could be small and close, or it could be much, much, much bigger, but miles further away. And of course, they tell us it's miles further away and much, much bigger. But the reality is you can see sunspots with a P900 and a solar filter. So it can't be that far away, because them sunspots, I mean, you don't know how big they are, but they look small relative to the sun. But those sunspots are a thing, right? And we can see it with a P900 and a lens filter, a solar filter. So yeah, angular size is a sum, boys and girls. It's not just measuring the angle. Don't let them tell you that it is. Double speaking wankers.
Indeed. We know so little about the sky. We can see it and what it does and have seen it and what it does for a very long time, as far as I can establish. So when you were struggling with astronomy versus astrology, the way I tried to remember it was logic and naming. So astrology being the logic of it, which they established a very long time ago. Now they just go around naming shit. So astronomy.
Is
I'm
that-
gonna name that.
Which, according to Brenda, is science.
I'm gonna
Naming
name
something
that
is
a
science.
black hole. I'm gonna call that a black
That's
hole.
science. That's science. You just perform science, Nathan. There
See
you
that
go.
light? I'm gonna call that a gas. So that's what astronomy is.
Are you referring to the actual sky or the non-actual sky?
Yeah. And when they see that light in the non-actual sky, they're then going to claim that that's proof of gas pressure in a vacuum. And we're like, what do you mean it's a light in the sky, dickhead? But if they believe that that light in the sky is a gas giant, then yeah, I can see the logic behind saying that that's proof of gas pressure in a vacuum. But you need to prove that it is a gas giant in a vacuum to say that it's true. You can't just spitball it back as that's the official explanation. We need to see that it's true. That's what science does. It proves things. It doesn't disprove things. It can disprove things. That's what the null hypothesis is for. But the hypothesis proves things. So when these morons say science doesn't prove things, ask them, what does the null hypothesis do?
So it's an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy, like all of them. So if we can have gas in a vacuum, I will observe a light in the sky. I observe a light in the sky, therefore we can have gas in a vacuum. Circular reasoning. If P then Q, Q therefore P, and affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy.
I can't tell you the consequences of that Musser now. Not doubling down, but basically saying that gravity is not a force. The effects are wide-reaching. All the calculations that include little g, right? That literally it brings them all to the forefront, because one of them is weight. Rumpus pushes that weight's a force, and he said it so many times. If you're not familiar with the show, it is his mantra, right? That's why I remember it. It's his mantra, and it's his get out. But that also tells me that Rumpus absolutely knows that is the point. That's where he's argued it for that long, that he believes that's his win, right? Or he knows absolutely that he's lying, and that's the point where the counter comes from, and he needs to keep us away from that at all costs by dogmatically and religiously asserting it, because weight is a force, really? So it's like saying, praise Helios, and that the effects are huge. It also means, from Jaren's point of view, everyone's talking about whether or not relative density is creating forces or not, or whatever, that relative density argument. Well, if gravity is not a force, and it needs some kind of bias to get the acceleration initially, then whatever might be causing it, be it electromagnetic or otherwise, it's definitely not gravity causing it, because gravity is not a force. It doesn't make things do things. So whatever's going on with the relative density point, it's not gravity doing anything. It might be electromagnetic. Who cares? It's definitely not gravity doing it. So thanks, Georgie Musser, that we can cross-reference and apply that everywhere. Shout outs to Georgie Musser.
Well, not only did Georgie Musser did what we're all talking about, but inadvertently, he's changed little g and big G for little m and big M. Magic.
Yeah.
And then he says it's supported by the underlying science. Okay, I want to see this underlying science for the little m and big M that replace little g and big G. Show it.
See, the thing is, underlying science isn't part of, that's the definition of pseudoscience. Underlying science is pseudoscience because it's not based on scientific method. That's the definition I always put on screen, because it's dead simple and we all get it. We're not all sticking to it at a minute. It's filtering through. People are using it, but we need to adopt it because it's a phrase that kills the ball. Anything that's not based on scientific method, be that natural science and the breeding patterns of birds, as credible as that sounds for science, it's not based on scientific method. So by definition, it's pseudoscience. So it's the same for all aspects of science. So what underlying science, that's not based on scientific method, is it? That's based on underlying science. So whatever underlying science is or isn't, it's definitely not based on scientific method. And if it's not based on scientific method, unfortunately, it's pseudoscience.
Well, yeah, but George Musser is using it, and this is why QE and Nathan jump all over everybody who says science, and they don't want to go through the scientific method.
Correct. So, because scientific method is the difference between fake science and real science. And obviously all this stuff to do with the shape of the Earth and all the galaxies and all the convection currents of Venus. I mean, how can you get a thesis? How can you get a PhD on something that has got absolutely no science to it whatsoever? Where is the science? Spectroscopy. Right. What's it proving, right? What is it proving? Is it complying with scientific method? No, not really. There's no practical experimentation possible.
Did you say his thesis was on the convection currents of Venus?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you can't measure gravity between two planets, because you can't, how does he get the convection currents between us and Venus?
It must have a nuclear core that's self-perpetuating, and it must be based on our core because it's the same size. So therefore, I can logically and reasonably infer that it must have the same device that we've apparently got. It
In
it
other
makes a
words,
mockery.
unicorns.
Yeah, it makes a mockery of science.
Yeah, but he said that the in between the distances, there's no application of this force. It can't be measured.
Yeah, but what? Yeah, are you on the same page with convection currents of Venus's mantle? We're on about the internal composition of Venus, and he's claiming the convection currents of it.
Well, if I want to get on the show, I've got to have an internet connection, and that's how you're hearing me. He wants to tell me about the convection currents of Venus, and he's telling me that the force that keeps the planets in their alignment can't be measured in between because it's not really there. It's not literal. So how in the world does he get his hands-on real science to measure the convection currents of Venus?
I don't think he necessarily measured it. I think he hypothesized how it must work based on pseudoscience bullshit nonsense.
No, then I got $1 billion in the bank.
Yeah.
We're getting a reading.
And it's real because you can just think that it's real.
Yeah,
And
it's
if we
just made
start
up.
arguing about the convection currents of Venus against Musser, right, that's effectively like arguing whether Santa prefers mince pies or the brandy.
Yeah, it's real because he made it up himself.
Yeah. The epitome of pseudoscience.
Yeah, this was another death for gravity today. It was sad.
I hope to God Jaron's on his walk right now, and I hope he's listening on his podcast device, whatever it is that he listens to the show on, because he says he often listens to the show first thing in the morning. Jaron, this literally destroys the idea that there is some kind of force that might be attributed to gravity for this density tower thing. Because if there is a force, it's definitely not gravity. It might be something else, but it's definitely not gravity. So let's just give them that there's some other force. It's not the force they're telling us it is. So we'll give Bob his electromagnetic cores. Who cares? It's not gravity. And let's be honest, it changes everything in terms of the maths. It turns it in its practical application. It pigeonholes everything as pseudoscience that's to do with gravity. Literally everything, because it's not actually a force. After all, Einstein's current science is it's the bending of space-time. And as we all know, it's a mathematical construct. It's got no experimental application whatsoever. It's literally arguing what flavor sherry should you give Santa when he comes and drops the presents off at Christmas. That's the context.
I know the point has been made, and I just made it, but it's even more of a death blow because they're just admitting the whole thing was a magic trick from the beginning, and because now they're saying it's magic. They're finally telling us it was a magician telling us about this non-existing gravity. So it's moved. It's fantastic. They're admitting it's magical.
Yeah, they're admitting it's magic, and they're admitting that Einstein snapped the wand. So that puts Cavendish out the window. You can't even argue Cavendish anymore, because if it is a force of some kind attracting it, it can't be gravity, because gravity is not a force. It's a good day to be on our
I think I understand now why you were so kind of like didn't know what to do at first. You're a little bit surprised because I felt the same way when I was watching it. I was like, wait a minute, is he really saying these things? Did he really just say the third time that gravity is not the force?
Yeah, there's a reason he was cited it by us in the first instance. Yeah, there's a reason we bandied his name around, because he uses the Einsteinian nonsense to snap the wand in two when it comes to the Reverend John Mitchell and Cavendish gravity.
Yeah. And
then he uses the phrase wand and then comes out and literally says it's magic.
Yeah. So Chocolate,
Like,
what did, just clarify what you meant then. Your words then were, that's why I was a little bit surprised while you were a bit confused about the outcomes. I might have butchered what you just said then, but what did you mean then when you said that? Are you referring to when I first originally cited Musser on that document, or are you referring to when Craig?
No. Almost like today with this video, and you're like, I don't understand how he's trying to box this up as a win, and it's like I understand, because when I'm listening to it, I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't this guy supposed to come out and like, destroy Sleeping Warrior with his argument? And basically, not only did he back him up, but he literally shitted all over this whole Newtonian gravity principle.
It's the equivalent of you having a 10-to-1 favourite prize fighter go up against a total underdog, and everybody in the crowd is expecting the 10-1 favourite, whatever, I don't know anything about odds, whatever good odds are, to win. They're expecting the prize fighter to win. So they're all going in there and they're like, right, Mike Tyson's definitely going to win this fight. Brilliant. Let's watch, see how it goes. And then the underdog absolutely annihilates him. And you can't quite believe your eyes as the skinny dude annihilates Mike Tyson before your very eyes. So at the end of the fight, you can't quite believe what you've just watched. Mike Tyson, 2 black eyes, couple of broken ribs, absolutely been annihilated, stands up, goes up to the side, goes up to the cameras and goes, that was a good win. I did well. I'm really pleased with myself. I won so well. And everyone goes, what? And you can't quite believe your ears. That's what this is the equivalent of.
Yeah, exactly.
It all comes back to the Emperor's new clothes. They just will not admit that he's naked.
Let's put this back into a context that you just used Mike Tyson then, right? The biggest loss that I can remember of Mike Tyson was when he fought Evander Holyfield in the mid-90s. And it was obviously the infamous one where he bit Evander Holyfield's ear, right? Everybody was claiming that Tyson was going to rip him apart. And Evander Holyfield played the tactical role where he was jab and move, pick up points, not necessarily batter your opponent to the floor and give him a black eye. He was just playing tactical boxing. And on that day, tactical boxing won. And Tyson was getting infuriated to the point where he bit his ear and he got disqualified. So that was one of his losses. But everybody had Mike Tyson down as the victory there, in the same way that Craig's been building himself up, because Musser's going to come in and he's going to kill me and all that. And I was like, okay, I'm all right with, because like I said, there were 3 potential outcomes. One was that Craig wouldn't ask the specific question that we were fighting over, and George would give it a correct answer, an innocent answer, but not address the point and he claimed victory. That was one scenario. The second scenario was that Craig would ask the correct question and Musser would contradict himself. And I thought, he's never going to do that, surely. But that was a possible outcome. He didn't do that either. So, but what's actually happened is Craig's asked the correct question, but Musser's actually reasserted his position. And somehow Craig's not spotted that it doesn't support his position. But he's claiming that it's a massive victory, the way that Tyson was supposed to knock out Evander Holyfield. But what's actually happened is Tyson's bit Evander Holyfield's ear got disqualified in the same way that Georgie Musser's bit Fight the Flat Earth's ear. And although he's not been disqualified by the ref, he's basically said, there you go, mate. There's your bit of your ear back. I'll see you in casualty in a bit. And that's what's happened.
I called this. I said this is what would happen. He'd come out, he'd reassert his position exactly as he stated it. He wouldn't support Craig's position. I called this. The only person who elaborated further on that was Quantum Eraser, who said he'll also put his foot in his mouth with every other sentence because he's got a position that's untenable to begin with. So all he can do is make his situation worse. And my response to John, and I'll have to concede that John was right and I was wrong. I said, no, he won't. He'll just tentatively reassert his position exactly as he has in the documentation that we cite, and it won't necessarily, aid us any further. He'll just toe the line. I don't think I said it in those exact words, but words similar to that. And John said, no, these crayon munchers have only got to open their mouth and they do themselves a disservice. You watch. And John was absolutely right. And but I called this. I said he's not going to contradict his position because that would leave him in a very precarious position in his career. So he's never going to do that, and that's what I said would happen, and I was absolutely right. Just to say,
I think ultimately, however this goes down, right? They'll want to forget this at all costs. They're never going to want to talk about this again. So it's up to us basically to maximize this and ram it down their throats. Because if we don't ram it down their throats and we allow it to die, this is the biggest point that goes against this idea that A, gravity is a force, B, Cavendish proves anything. Because if it does prove something, it's definitely not proving gravity because there is no force of attraction, right? So it kills Cavendish. All these idiots. Honestly, this is a really good day for being on our side.
Definitely.
Because Cavendish is dead.
I don't think it's going to die, considering we were citing him to begin with, and because he was hinting at it being magic. With snaps the wand in two. We love that, right? Well, now he's saying it. He's literally saying it is magic. This is great. Happy days.
Nathan, it's only fair and right that we give credit for the article that this has come from, so people know what we're referring to. Can I put my screen on?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Because the reality is, this is like Where is it? Is it in here? Where is it? It must be in Gravity. How Einstein, there we go. So this is the article in question. If you're not familiar with the background to it, Einstein's article, right? It's written by Scientific America, George Musser in 2015. It's relatively current. And there's a couple of key phrases in here that I picked up on. Credit to John for pointing this out to me. I didn't know about this until John spotted it. And basically what he says, let's have a look. It's been a while since, it's above that last, there we go. For instance, Einstein created his theory of general relativity, which provides our modern understanding for gravity, with the express purpose of expunging non-locality from physics. Newton's gravity acted at a distance as if by magic, and general relativity snapped the wand in two by showing that the curvature of space-time, and not an invisible force, gives rise to gravitational attraction. That's the citation that I referred to. Craig said that's not the... What?
Say again, Flatzoid?
I don't think he was speaking.
Pop
So that
yourself
was
on
the
mute,
citation.
please.
That was the citation that I presented. Craig said that I'd misunderstood it because I'm stupid, and he got all of his gay little mates to tell me that I was stupid, that I'd got it wrong, that I was going to die. This is the death of my channel. Rah rah rah. And this is what they did with angular size. They said the same thing, and I stood my ground because I'm not stupid. I understand what this means, right? Anybody can really understand this, but when you get 10 people telling you that you're stupid, you do question it. You do wonder, have I missed an angle here? Is there something obvious that I'm missing, that just because I'm biased in favor of challenging the science? And the only thing that they came back with is that when he says here, and not an invisible force, what he means is it's not an invisible force, it's some other kind of force. It's still a force, but it's not an invisible force. It's just some other force. Now he's saying that basically it's magic, right? And he snaps that magical wand in two. But in the bigger scheme of things, obviously that's a bit of an issue. But think about this with the density tower. When it says here that Einstein described down, or he defined down as the direction in which time passes more slowly, even if gravity was a force, Einstein's science is the current science, and he defines down not to be to the center of the Earth. He defines it to be the direction in which time passes more slowly. So in the context of the density tower, and whether or not there's some bit of bias that's influencing the initial acceleration, it's not going down to the center of the Earth, according to the current science. It's going down the direction in which time travels more slowly. So whatever that means in this context of the density tower, it's not applicable. But this is the current science for gravity. So whether or not there is something that's pulling these moving eggs and all that, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is that might be doing it, it's not the current science. There may be some other cause. And it's brilliant because the ball earthers can't even challenge us, because we're doing it. This argument is within flat earth. It's not even to do with the ballers, so they can't even criticize us. So whatever's going on here, it's clearly not gravity, because gravity's not a force. I love it.
Hey, Anthony, when you see the video, you're going to see what I'm about to say. When I was watching this, and this article you just posted is giving me my thought right now. In this article, it's on paper. He had time to review it before he submitted it. On the actual interview with Craig on Fight the Flat Earth, he's leaning forward into his camera. He's very relaxed. It's as if they both had enough martinis so they can just talk casually. And the truth came out in that video that he would never put in this article. This is a death blow.
I guess what we really need to do, we need to collaborate with Bob from Globebusters, because he's got a big audience too, with Jaren from Jarenism, because he's got a big audience, and for all the other people in the community that have a big audience. And we need to push this out there, because if this guy says that gravity is not a force, it literally changes everything. Now, obviously, it's already there. The text is already there. But from 1920 onwards, scientific community accepted it. Regardless of whether we think it's right or not, their science tells us that that's the position, right? We obviously don't even accept that. But that's what their position is. So they can't go back to the pre-1920 position with scientific acceptance, because they always say scientific consensus is what we accept because there's no reason for us not to, right? Well, the scientific consensus is that it's the bending of space-time that causes this gravitation perception, right? Which is not a force. So the scientific community and the scientific consensus tells you it's not a force. So why is it that you keep bleating on about Cavendish? Why is it you keep calling it a force? Why is all the maths including G? Why is all that called forces when it's applied? All that is nonsense. So what do we do from here? Because this is, like you say, this is a killer blow. It literally removes Cavendish out of the equation. So for all the flat earthers, let's not let them talk about Cavendish anymore, because it is antiquated science. It's old hat. It's not the current position. You need a little bit of bendy space-time.
Yeah, now we have a new quote. Gravity is not a force. George Musser, 2019.
Magic.
Let's just preempt what they'll say.
No, it's not a force, but you can imagine it to be.
Yeah, it's not a force, but you can imagine it to be. Let's preempt what all the idiot ballers on our side against us in this topic will say. They'll say that we've just repackaged it the way that Google we're saying they have. Yep. They will present to their audiences that we're repackaging a loss as a victory, which is exactly what they're doing. They're repackaging a loss as a victory. And they're all stupid. But the reality is, he literally says it's the opposing position. And I don't know how honest people that have got any faculty of mind and any intellect or common sense whatsoever can interpret gravity being a force and gravity not being a force. It doesn't manifest itself as a force. It isn't a force. You can't calculate for it being a force. You can't claim weight as a force because gravity is not a force.
This is
I was just going to say.
This is a perfect.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you Google search imagine to form or have a mental picture or idea of something, you can have an idea of it being a force, but it's not actually a force. You can imagine it being a force, though. Leave you fundies to your imagination.
I love the bigger picture in this, because it just so happens to coincide with the density argument and whether or not density is a force or not. Now, my position is that you increase the density and that creates a disequilibrium between the amount of pressure that one against the other creates, and that's what makes the egg move. Now, they're all saying, no, density is not it's not a force, it's not a force. Well, if gravity is not a force, and we are changing the density, right, it means that you're now trying to infer that there's an additional cause that's not even a force. So what's making the egg move if it's not the salt that I've added, which has added a little bit of density below it, which has created a bit of a pressure below it, and it's pushed the egg up? If that's not what's happening, and gravity's not a force neither, what's making the egg move?
I was going to say, if anybody ever wanted an example of violation of the law of non-contradiction, this would be one of the biggest, easiest one. It's this, but it's not this in the same relationship.
So it reminds me of the older lady in the 90s when she was, I'm going to have to get it, Nathan, you have to play it. Do you remember that line that she said, that everybody has a problem with this? I'm going to get it, because this is basically, and I applied it in my video. I said it's directly against the ballers. It's so apt right now. It's unbelievable.
Something about they don't ever think about density. They don't remember density, and it's very important.
Yeah.
Something like that.
There it is. I'm going to get it on screen right now. Here we go. Come back to it in a sec. 1 sec.
No worries. Just let us know when you want it presenting and I'll stick it up. It's only about 3 or 4 seconds anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's fine. Been a great couple of shows. Very relaxed. It's nice winning.
Whee. I'm sure the Globers are not relaxed.
That's because the illogical cannot exist in reality, and that's what that show showed.
Right, Nathan, here we go. So let me flick screen share on. This is aimed at school kids, right? But you have to apply this against ballers in the context of whether or not gravity is a force and the effect of it not being a force. Because if it's not a force, it doesn't do anything, right? So this woman is talking about density being the reason why things float or sink. Now, she doesn't use the word buoyant ever. She constantly uses the word mass, and she constantly uses displacement, but never buoyant and never gravity, right? It's what she doesn't say that's important. But when she wraps this up by concluding, she's basically contextualizing this thing, these experiments she's doing to do with gas laws. And what she now says is aimed at school kids. Apply this to everybody that claims Cavendish, that believes gravity is a force. This is what she's saying against them, and it directly applies. Let's listen to her next 2 or 3 sentences. She's referencing the children, But let's change it in our minds so that she's referencing the ballers instead. Because in this case, it's the ballers that are the children. Let's apply her words against the ballers, the priests, the idiots.
That's a tough one for them. They have to remember density, and no matter how well you drill density into their heads, they still have a problem with that. So this could actually be used.
They still have a problem with that. And that is exactly the problem we're faced right now. People don't remember density. It is the cause. They want us to believe it's gravity, but we know that it's not.
Excellent stuff. You want to spam the link to that video, or I'll do it if you like, so I have to approve it. If I've still got it up,
Yeah.
if not, I won't. Yeah, I have. So that video.
Hey, let me ask a question of clarification, just because I can imagine they are going to accuse you of cherry picking. What was the difficulty, right? They have difficulty with density. So
she's describing how density is causing whether an object floats or sinks, right? And what she says is everybody wants to, it's what she's not saying that she's referencing there. She's not saying that there's a buoyant force. She's not saying that gravity is pulling something down and creating a counter net force, which is what they tell us. The ballers tell us that. She's literally saying it's density that's causing things to move up and down, right? And it's relative to the medium that you're in. You can change the density and it'll either add weight to it or remove weight to it. But the minute we say weight, they then apply maths, little g. But by doing that, it ends up being like gravity. So what she's doing is deliberately not using the words that they use against us. And then she says, people have got to remember density. They have a problem with that. And they do. Everybody believes it's gravity, and it's not.
Even uses the words less dense or more dense, right?
Yeah. Less
never
dense,
says
more
gravity,
dense.
never says buoyancy, none of that.
Yeah. It's a fabulous clip because it applies directly to all the morons that think there's a Cavendish experiment. That's not really an experiment, but even if it was, it doesn't prove that mass is attracted by mass. Because if it was, it's not gravity, because gravity is not a force. It's honestly, the effects and the ramifications through the community is big there, and I'm loving it. And it allows Bob, in the density buoyancy egg thing that Bob and Jaren and Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, whether it doesn't matter who's right in this case, because we can allow Bob to beg the question with whatever electromagnetic he wants, right? Or any alternative. It's spitballing, right? But it's definitely not gravity causing it. So anyone that might think that there might be gravity on flat Earth, right? This is the position. We don't need gravity. But they absolutely need it to keep the atmosphere onto the sphere. Because if there's no atmosphere being held on by gravity, it goes off into space. It fills the available volume.
Gravity doesn't do that. No, why are you making this argument when that's not an argument that they can use? Gravity does not hold the atmosphere on. You can't defy the second law of thermodynamics with gravity. That's not ever been part of the narrative. There's even citations, which I don't have at my fingertips, that completely piss in the face of that, Anthony. So no, that's not why they need gravity. That's
I know,
not what
but what I'm saying is, when we ask them, why does the atmosphere...
They need it for the balls. They don't address the gas pressure.
They need a force to be pulling the atmosphere back on.
Yeah, but that doesn't work. That doesn't mathematically work if you presuppose all of it. So it's literally incorrect even by their own standards.
I know, but when you ask them what's their answer for how you can have gas pressure next to a vacuum, they always come back with gravity. Now we can say gravity's not a force.
That's like saying ships go over the horizon.
It doesn't matter.
Really
when they say that, I say, show me. And they go, oh, well, you just have to imagine it. Well, no, that's fine, but that's not a useful argument, especially when I can find citations that basically piss in the face of that. Gravity will not defy the second law of thermodynamics. You will still have entropy taking effect regardless of their claimed force of gravity.
I agree with that.
So it's not suddenly an undoing of that argument. That argument's solid and strong without that. It doesn't need it. But what it does do is just piss in the face of everybody that claims that it's a force, which they do.
That's what I'm saying. And when they say gravity holds it on.
Just one more thing. So when you say they need gravity to explain it, and Bob can have electromagnetism or whatever you said to explain it, just tell me what it is that they're explaining.
It's not gravity, is it? That's my point.
No, just listen to my question.
It is a clown.
Hold on. What are they explaining? What is it? You said they need gravity and Bob can use electromagnetism to explain it. So what is it? In quotes.
It's this bias that begins to make a movement.
What bias?
They say people believe
I've got to slow down there. What bias? I generally observe equilibrium. So what bias are you talking about when I observe equilibrium?
It's the nanosecond when it starts to move. That thing that kicks it is what people argue must be a force because it's moving.
Hold on. You've ignored my point. When it moves, I've just said I observe equilibrium. I'm looking out my window right now. Nothing is moving. So what are you talking about? What movement? What bias?
All right, okay. Do we really want to do right? I can't really argue their case for them. You would need Bob and Dipra to be able to argue their case for themselves because I'll probably butcher it. So I don't think we can really have this conversation and argue their case for them. However,
do you know what they say it, in quotes, is? What are they explaining? What is it?
Yeah, some universal force that makes the initial kick.
That's their explanation. What's the it that they're explaining with that explanation?
Well, they think there's an electromagnetic bias in Dipra.
And that's another explanation. You're giving me an explanation. You haven't given me the it yet. What is it? What is the thing that they're explaining with that?
The phenomena that is that an object appears to be stationary, but then appears to start to move all by itself.
That doesn't happen.
Well, it does with the egg, doesn't it?
No.
Well, the egg wasn't moving. I added a bit of salt.
You added a bit of salt. Right. No worries. You added a bit of salt. Now explain where this happens in nature. Where does that natural phenomena happen? Where do I see the bias, the disequilibrium, naturally occurring?
So objects moving all by themselves, you mean?
Wind. Things in nature do that all.
Yeah, but wind's the interaction, isn't it?
So what you're saying is when something is in disequilibrium, it will displace relative to its medium.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
So where's the it? I'm still not getting an it out of that. Yeah, things generally are in equilibrium, and if they're not for any reason, they will seek it. Now, the direction they travel depends on the medium, so it's sod all to do with anything to do with direction. That's medium specific. So what's it? What are they trying to explain?
I don't know, but what I can do is plug the idea that's coming up. I believe they're having a big discussion about it on Globusters on Sunday. So I'm sure they'll be able to answer that question. I'm sure if we contact them somehow, that they will address that specifically.
Okay, well, just as a preface to that, if it is in any way, shape or form somebody coming along and forcing something out of equilibrium, then I'm just going to hand wave dismiss it immediately. So if, for example, like Anthony's just done, he says, well, I put salt in and the egg moved. No, the egg was perfectly happy before he came along and did something. Nothing changed. It was in equilibrium to begin with. Now, unless you can show me an example where something's out of equilibrium for whatever reason, usually given as the example of an apple falling from a tree, or conversely, if you have a leaf at the bottom of a lake and its leaf detaches, it'll go up. In other words, medium specific. So isn't attributing a direction, it's relative. But I want to know what the it is. Now, we've spent 2 shows laughing at the fact that they don't have an it. There is no it. There's just this magic that they can imagine. So now that we've absolutely pummeled, based on their own rhetoric from George Musser, this fantasy of gravity, their it, I want to know what our side of the argument's it is. And if it is forcing something out of equilibrium, I'm not interested.
I hope you're listening, Jaron, because this is like the first part of the scientific method, isn't it? Observe the phenomena. Where do we see something falling into a state of disequilibrium if it was previously in equilibrium, or otherwise fall into a state of equilibrium if it wasn't in equilibrium? Where do we see that actually happening?
No. Hold on. You've danced over my point. Hold on. You've danced over my point. No, I've already explained that. So no. That doesn't give me an it. That's why I went through it and explained it. It's medium specific. So there's no going to be any directionality attributed to that effect. And if you study that effect of the cause of a leaf detaching at the bottom of a lake or an apple detaching from its stem on a tree, that is the phenomena that you will be studying. That is the phenomena. So from there, I'm not going to be getting some other magical thing like gravity that we've just pissed all over, are we? Because that's the phenomena. Now, you can suppose some magic. Now, I'm not gonna tolerate that. No, no, no. If the phenomena is a leaf detaching at the bottom of a lake and going up, then that's your phenomena that you're studying. You tell me the cause of your leaf rising in a lake. If your phenomena is an apple falling, that's your phenomena. What's the cause of the apple detaching from its stem? No worries. Isolate your independent variable for that phenomena and tell me what caused it, and I'll accept it. So long as it's been through the scientific method and you've established the cause of that effect. That is the effect that's being claimed, though. So when we get to the stage that somebody goes, I'm going to imagine a magical force of down, I will just hand wave dismiss that shit immediately. That's all.
Okay.
That should be done because it literally doesn't exist.
Yeah, I do agree with your point, Nathan. My point was simply that when they claim that they can now have the atmosphere of the Earth being held on, when they claim that they can have the atmosphere of the Earth being held on by gravity, if gravity is not a force, that kills that argument. They absolutely need a force to hold the atmosphere on. Now, I know you're not going to like it, but it stops a lot of arguments if we can literally cite Musser saying that gravity is not a force.
There is no force.
I know.
It's not that gravity's not a force. The explanation still stands up, though. Everything still works. And there's no gravity.
Right.
So there is no force.
I know, Nathan, but they believe there is one. But if gravity's not a force, then they've got a problem with the atmosphere.
I don't even know what they believe, technically.
They'll believe.
Apparent, or there would have been objections on the faces of those who heard him out. They don't know what they actually believe. What they
believe, Arwen, is they.
It is.
You're all trampling all over Arwen. Sorry, go on, Arwen.
The whole point is they don't know actually what they believe. They just believe that there must be something, whatever it is, or whatever it turns out to be. It must be there, even though they don't really understand what it even is.
They believe anything that they're told, so long as it supports their story. They will genuinely believe that George Musser somehow supported Craig and Craig beat me, right? So the bigger picture is it kills gravity in all aspects. The littler picture, the little boy picture, the little crusade between me and Craig, because they've presented it in a way that makes it look like that somehow Craig's won, they will still believe that Craig's won somehow. I will still get trolled comments, regardless of whether or not he actually did win. I'll still get the trolled comments saying how stupid I am.
Anthony,
don't believe anything.
Don't troll bait. It's up to you if you're going to do that. You're going to troll.
No, I'm encouraging it because it identifies all the dumb bastards that believe anything. It's all the gullible bastards or troll accounts. People on their side will believe anything. They are the most naive and gullible people ever when it comes to this topic.
Yeah. So that's pretty obvious.
Right, in the face of Anthony's very topsy-turvy emotional ride through this George Musser video we've been discussing, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you in the live Nathan Oakley 1980 audience for tuning in. Hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to stay tuned if you are watching on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, as there will be an after show to follow. If you need to keep yourself occupied after the live stream, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video. Stay tuned if you're watching on Nathan Oakley.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
On the words that we used and the normal meaning of words, come over to my channel and leave me some hate messages underneath, because you guys are going to identify yourselves as the dumb bastards that believe everything you're told and are the most naive, stupid people in the discussion. Yeah, I might make a mistake. I might get one guy's name wrong when he's of the same area in the same city and he's in the same practical thing. One was philosophy, the other one is heliocentrism. What's the difference? I might make a mistake, but you guys, I'd rather make a mistake, right, and learn from it than be a naive, gullible moron that believes anything that people like Craig or George Musser tells them if they package it up in a way that sounds like it's a victory. I'd rather make the mistake and learn than just be a sheep that's being fed.
Hey, Anthony, let me comment on something I'm picking up on here. When you try to play both sides, to be fair, this is where this dialogue went back and forth with you and Nathan. When Nathan is just going to say what he believes is true and can be supported by reason and real science, not pseudoscience, he's taking a position against everything else that stands against it. Today or yesterday, we saw Craig at Fight the Flat Earth interview a like-minded George Musser. So they're both globetards. And they destroyed their own argument by doing the two positions. Why we insist on taking a position on truth and only on that, and holding their feet to the fire and not giving in unless they can show a scientific method followed, is for that very reason, for that demarcation line. Then they'll go and they'll play both sides. And as they do, they look ridiculous. That's why when you were trying to be fair, so your heart was in the right place, it just kind of falls apart because it's not reality. Let them do that. All we got to do is just express the truth that it can be observed and proven in reality.
Nathan, I'm going to send you a file on Skype. Would you mind just leaving it on as a mark of Rumpus's death? Would you mind just leaving it in the background? I don't know if you can do that easily or not, but could you put this in the background for the remainder of the show as an homage to Rumpus's death, that weight is a force and other things are not? Wait, it's not a force. Rumpus has it wrong. He's misled people for all of his life, and he's always claimed he's been 100% right on 100% of his claims. Turns out he's not right. Weight is not a force. Gravity is not a force.
And
there you
air is not the atmosphere either.
Yeah. Riley, so right now I'm on Discord too, and I don't think you realize how quickly your video or whatever you did affected, because so I do these debates all the time about orbits. Like you said, have you ever heard him say that before? I have never heard anyone say in Newtonian physics you can't have a force without acceleration. Nobody has ever said that before. So it is already permeating into how they have to change their lexicon to accommodate that new video.
Correct. And that's the way it needs to be, because they're arguing an antiquated science from pre-1920. Think back to what happened in 1920. That was the end of the First World War, right? 1914 to 1918, World War I. They're arguing science from the end of the World War I. How? Are we getting all kicked?
No,
are we? I don't think so.
No.
You're being very, very long-winded today.
Long-winded?
That's all right. That's all right. This is a win for Riley today, so let him do what he's got to do.
But I'm going to say about it what I'm going to say. I'm just saying, you could take away
You got to be Arwin.
and your
Come on,
message would be even stronger.
Hey, Arwin, right now, what I want you to picture in your mind is the mating call of the alligators and the crocodiles on the banks of the river. You know, when you sit there and they're getting warmed up by the sun and they have their mouth open. That's me right now. I'm on the banks of the river. I'm being warmed by the sun, and I've got my mouth open, and I'm just waiting for the girly alligators to fly by, because that's my mating sign. That's me right now.
I don't know. I have a different view on you currently.
What do you mean? If this is going to be an insult, don't bother. I'm winning at the minute. I'm all right.
Just look at my screen.
Not really. That's not an insult, though, is it? That's okay.
It's the bad guy from Sonic the Hedgehog.
It's Dr. Eggman. Come on.
What's he
egg
called?
that destroyed gravity.
It's a Sonic the Hedgehog supervillain, Dr. Eggman.
Dr. Eggman, that's it.
The thing we can do, all flat earthers can now do, is say that gravity is not a force. It kills so much of their arguments.
Been saying that.
I know, but it's not really picked up traction, has it? Because it's like, yeah, but everybody accepts that gravity's a force, right? By 1920, that was reverted, wasn't it? And they don't tell us
Not everybody, apparently. Mr. George fucking Musser doesn't.
Where in the world is Georgie fucking Musser? He's on our side now, isn't he?
Where in the world is Georgie fucking Musser?
Hey, Arwin, is that a pear-shaped, Anthony, or what is that?
No, egg shapes. It's Dr.
Oh.
Eggman.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that Neil deGrasse didn't get any copyrights on this.
I don't think so. And it's not Earth anyway. Dr. Eggman, the super villain always.
Where's John? John's normally here for the second show, and he's missed the bus.
Got like aspirations to do a proper show on this and pull apart all the quotes that he's got. He's obviously spent a fair bit of time pulling out those quotes, right? So I would imagine that he wants to at least address it.
Yeah,
I don't know. I haven't spoken
It's
to him.
funny because when I'm watching it, the quotes that stood out to me are the same ones he posted up too. Like, because it's these quotes are devastating, man. Like, I don't understand how anybody that believes they live on a magical spinning water ball thinks this is a great freaking argument. Gravity is not a force. Your man, your homeboy said it himself numerous times.
Yeah.
So work with that, guys. Next time you want to tell a flat earther, oh, gravity is a force, you might want to listen to that nonsense.
We need to spit it down the throats of all. Anytime that the gravity comes up, and it comes up all the time. Gravity's not a force. Literally, the first words out your mouth. Gravity's not a force. Of course, it's a force. Georgie Musser.
Yeah, this also
Where in the
pushes them
world
to space-time
did you
bending,
fucking
right?
miss
Now
it?
they have to. Now they got to. They've been using mass attracting mass because it has some kind of quasi-real ability, right? You can really see a rock fall, and that's tangible, right? And then you can kind of associate tangibility with mass attracting mass. With space-time bending, there is absolutely no tangibility whatsoever. There is nothing to witness. You just have to accept it, and we're pushing them there. Like, this really destroys the mass attracting mass. And now they have to say that gravity is space-time bending, and it gets into all sorts of untestable theories.
I would
Yeah,
have
so
to.
that the next time they want to say, oh, Einstein was just describing how gravity is a force. No, how gravity is not a force. Thanks,
Yeah.
Einstein.
I would
We're
have
looking
to.
out.
I would have to disagree with that last statement. They didn't prove mass attracts mass. They can't prove time and bending of space-time. They had two chances. They chose two invalid ways of trying to tell us things, and they lost on both counts.
Half my desktop is filled just with. I could make a slideshow of just every picture that's on my desktop.
I've been putting
Are they
them
all
up
about
actually.
me?
It's been a good little slideshow.
Are
Are they
we
all
just
about
see a
me,
picture?
Alan?
No, Owen's got his slides that he's gone out and done, good little depictions of stuff. Eyeball on a stick, the famous
I put a
hamster.
picture of Armin in
squirrel.
the hangout.
You're a moron.
I like the zombie R.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
You need to make another one about this gravity thing, Owen. You've got to make a new meme.
Gravity?
Scientific consensus, dogmatism, donkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that scientific consensus is where you lot think gravity's a force in it. It's not anymore.
It
That
was
consensus
before we
is
made that
missing.
distinguishment. So this is still from the old phase.
Hey, John. You hear us?
Bus is loose.
Johnny.
Don't forget strawman argument regurgitating cow, which still stands to this day.
Hey there, John.
Bus is loose.
How we doing?
I'm getting ready to eat some breakfast, man. Got eggs, bacon,
Oh, I've
toast.
just had Musser for breakfast. It was lovely. I mean, muesli.
I had him for
This
breakfast
is where it
last
all
night.
started.
Wait, is that John or is that literally John?
John, you're gonna have to listen back to this show. These
It's
two
not
shows
actually
today,
John,
man.
but you can think of it as John.
John, the housekeeping questions. Nathan, just give us an example of a housekeeping question. Nathan, ask me a question for housekeeping.
Any evidence of Earth curvature?
And then my answer would be, hang on. My answer is, Earth curvature is not actually Earth curvature, but you can think of it as Earth curvature.
That's right. You got it. Stay on it. Yeah, classic.
it's been a good-
just go ahead
good
and
two
just
shows.
go ahead and talk.
John,
Just go
how
ahead and
much
talk
laughing
amongst
did you do
yourselves.
watching that video, man?
Excuse me. Been stepped on again. I can't even get a word out edgewise.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
Can't
sorry.
eat breakfast. Just talk amongst yourselves while I eat. All right, calmly, and I'll be back.
Okay, we're all very keen to hear your opinion on the George Musser video.
Hang on,
My
you can't
opinion. I
criticise
had a
the-
whole exposition on it.
Yeah, we read out various chunks. Thank you very much. Very good. I haven't even
just
watched
say,
it. I haven't even watched it, John, and I've got that. I sat with a big smile while I ate my breakfast this morning reading through that, and I was like, this is sweet. Oh, this is great. And then Anthony's like, oh, I don't know, how can they claim this is the win? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, you having me on? This is ace. Have you read it?
Yeah. Hey, listen,
I
I
hit
love the
Riley
air,
up
Dawson.
and I said, Riley, have you seen this yet? She said no. I'm like, please go watch it because I'm dying over here watching this shit.
Yeah. I have to give credit for John for giving us the lowdown, because obviously he must have released this late last night or maybe the day. I don't know when he released it, but obviously people got wind that it was out there and I hadn't seen it. And they were saying to me, like, this is terrible for them. And I'm like, really? Really? I want to see it, but I had to sleep and stuff. But bottom line is that John's done the background for it. Shout outs to John. And basically everybody's picking up the same vibe. And this is devastating for them and it's glorious. What I want to know is, why are the ballers not going to call this nonsense outright? They always claim to be like of integrity and all that. If gravity's not a force, why aren't the ballers calling each other out saying, right, we're going to have to change everything now? Because we need a full and frank admission from these dickhead ballers, don't we? Surely they're going to have to denounce that gravity's a force.
Yeah, you've got it from somebody far more significant and, in our terms, useful than any baller could ever give you ever.
Oh, but I want the ballers to accept the science that they tell us that
Never
we
gonna happen.
Don't worry about them. They're morons.
They refer to these experts all the time, and then the one time we get an expert that they look up to defend our case, they're going to well, don't listen to that one.
What I've got to ask as well is, did Craig in that interview thing, did he address the 5 points, the 5 pieces of evidence that I gave him specifically for George Musser?
I know he mentioned it. He tried to at one point, like he tried to go back. See, he said, "Oh, Sleeping Warrior would be mad if I don't address this and that." And he did a shorthanded version of it, I guess.
Good. At least
I can't say that he addressed every point though.
Yeah, there were
I
only
was
5.
watching it while working, so.
Yeah, there were only 5, and 2 of them were Musser himself. So really, I mean, I didn't think 5 was like too much for it to be an issue, but at least he's had a go at doing it. I'd love to know what I'm gonna have to watch it. That is the thing.
You're going to get frustrated with how Musser talks. Like John Nail, he is a politician. Like he talks exactly like a politician. And before he even starts, Fight the Flat Earth asked him a direct question about the force. And he goes, well, before I get into that, let me state. And then he goes into this like preamble about like what isn't related to the question. And that's just how you knew. You were like, he's setting up. He's doing a setup. He's not giving answers.
Yeah. Anyone that dodges questions like that when they're closed questions, politicians' answers means that they're lying. That is literally why they call it a politician's answer, because we all know politicians are liars. So anyone that's swerving questions, should tell you a lot. I want to speak to Musser. I know he's not going to speak to me, but I want to speak to him.
Isn't that more simply said as a red herring?
So, I've just got a quick, maybe when John gets back, I'll ask him if we're going to actually do a full expose on this. I think it's worthy of it.
I never left. I never left. I'm just eating breakfast, man. Just
okay.
listening.
Are you around later?
John? What we need to do is get Jaren in on it as well. Let Jaren be part of it, because Jaren's well into this at the minute, because he's got this density thing, but it overlaps directly.
I love how Jaren is on board with the whole relative density thing, because it just makes sense.
He gets it. We all get it.
He absolutely gets it.
What it is, everybody's stuck by this idea that because something moves, it has to be a force. And what other forces are there? There's only the one that makes things move, apparently.
There you go. When does this moving occur exactly? When's this phenomena happening? Like I say, I generally observe equilibrium.
No.
I know. Arwin, go on.
Relative density disequilibrium causes force.
Where's the disequilibrium observed?
It's very directly. It is.
Let's check it out, man. I ask a direct question, and Arwin just asserts it as though it's just there. Where's this disequilibrium then? When do I see
hang on.
this?
To be fair, Nathan,
It doesn't matter what causes the disequilibrium.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we're trying to establish.
No.
Doesn't matter what causes it. I'll just invent something.
In the form of displacement.
I'll invent a disequilibrium that we never observe, and then I'll just invent the cause for it.
Yeah, we do all the time.
This is the very problem where we've got in the first instance, right? It's been diluted down so much that we don't recognise the purpose of gravity, what it's actually being used for.
The gravity system is presupposing there is like a field of force constantly pushing on everything that is within its vicinity.
Making
That's not what I'm
balls.
talking about
It's
at all.
making
Can I
balls.
finish the sentence, or are you just never gonna let me explain?
Because it's
it, Nathan?
making balls. That's what gravity is.
I know that's the end result of it. That's why it was designed that way.
End
But
result
I'm
of
just
what?
making a distinct difference between how the force of gravity is supposedly working, how it is presupposed, how it is conceptualized, versus actual forces happening due to local disequilibrium.
What disequilibrium? There we go. Back
Of
to the
the
question I
relative
just asserted.
densities. It is
What
caused by relative
disequilibrium?
density. Force comes into being due to relative density disequilibrium.
Where? Where's the disequilibrium? Where am I observing
The
this
moment
disequilibrium?
the object or whatever it is starts to displace because it is in disequilibrium for whatever caused it to be in disequilibrium, is
that's
not
my
relevant to the
point.
case.
But that
because
doesn't
it is not
happen.
about the disequilibrium.
So you're
It's
just
about
going to
the
imagine a
force
situation.
manifesting
So
due to
what you're doing, Arwin, is inventing and imagining a situation where disequilibrium starts to be the case.
No, I don't.
Well, show it me then.
How can I just watch Riley do his thing? Or let the sun heat up water and change its relative density in relation to whatever's floating in there, and things will change. This equilibrium happens naturally due to the natural world of daylight hitting
It doesn't
things.
change its density. It changes its state. It evaporates. What are you on about?
It doesn't just do that. It changes its density.
It
Things
evaporates.
change
It changes
density
its state.
due to heat, due to
It changes it
exposure.
into a different. It changes it into gas. It's a
And
completely different state. It's not
just
changing
that. Water heats up. It
Yeah.
doesn't just change into gas, Nathan.
Yeah, it changes its state entirely.
That's right. And thus, it changes its relative density equilibrium in the process with everything else that surrounds it, if that is the case.
So you're
That's
looking-
relative density disequilibrium.
describing evaporation as the phenomena
No,
and telling
you
me
know
that that's a
you
force.
are bringing in the evaporation. I never
That's what
mentioned
you
that.
described. You gave that as I asked where the
don't strawman me. I
That's
did
what you
not do
said.
that. I did not
Sorry,
mention gas or
can anybody else help me out on the
evaporation.
panel? Did I get sun evaporating water? Did I come up with that, or did Darwin say
you
that?
Did, yes. That's right. I was talking about things heating up.
Right, and you used an example of the sun heating up water and changing, giving us this equilibrium. I'm asking you to show me. Disequilibrium is what I'm looking for. Where do I observe disequilibrium naturally occurring?
Let's say the oceanic streams. There's a constant disequilibrium there, constant flow of water at the bottom of the ocean especially. It's constantly happening everywhere. There's always motion, or not always everywhere, but there are specific places where there is continual motion, continual disequilibrium, because there is continual heat exchange, changing the equilibrium of the matter, or changing the relative density of these matter, making them displace, and then changing it back in its state. And that's how things keep on flowing.
You think this stream is a density changing? Because because it's in disequilibrium. Well, fine.
That's what makes things
fine,
flow.
but that's your
when there's
phenomena,
a
isn't
heat
it?
difference.
That phenomena is that specific disequilibrium that you're describing, as opposed to a general force that we experience, Arwin.
I'm not talking about a general force, Nathan. You did it again. You did it again. I'm not saying there is a general force.
You said disequilibrium gives rise to the force. That's what these are. Am I imagining this? Am I going nuts?
Yes, you are. You're hearing it in your head because you can't step away from the standard routines you've been receiving typically this type of information in. I'm putting it in a different context. You don't seem to be picking it up. Even though
I will just say
that's not what I'm doing.
what you're saying sometimes is a bit confusing.
I'm saying we generally observe equilibrium. You're saying that the force comes from when we observe disequilibrium. And I go, when does that happen? And you go, some stream somewhere that's very chaotic.
It's
And I
only
go,
because
okay.
I can't mention man-made devices according to your rules, so I'm just giving a natural example. It does happen. Happens constantly.
But that
There's
then
constantly
becomes your
disequilibrium
if you're gonna
within the densities of nature.
But that becomes your phenomena, doesn't it? That's what you're observing. That's the phenomena. That specific disequilibrium that you're describing is the phenomena.
That disequilibrium is the disequilibrium. And it always works like that every time, no matter what the setup is. As long as there's maneuverability of an object, in the medium, then it will find an equilibrium if it is out of equilibrium within the relative density spectrum. And that is when it does, that's when the force comes into being. Only then.
But when
Only
is it?
then. The disequilibrium is directly correlating
You're reversing
with
the two
the
things.
force
You're
disequilibrium.
starting by saying when we start with disequilibrium, and then in the statement you make it clear that things are going to try and find equilibrium. Well,
Whatever force you want to introduce to cause that.
Where
that's
do we
really-
get to your starting point? If everything's generally in equilibrium to begin with, that's my point.
But that's an overgeneralization. That's
it?
my point. It's
So
not true.
oh, right. So you said in some deep, chaotic water.
Everywhere
That's pretty
in the world,
specific.
in the high
Hold on,
atmosphere,
Arwin. That's really
we're
specific.
Look at
Generally speaking, and I've got no issue saying this. It's not like really specific examples with streams in disequilibrium. Fine, I can buy that. But generally speaking, it's in equilibrium everywhere. That's what I observe, things in equilibrium, not
you already mentioned a
disequilibrium.
widespread exception. So you can overgeneralize and then mention all the exception. What did the Romans ever do for us? Well, they built the aqueduct and all that and
Red
all that
herring.
and all. Yeah.
Red herring.
No.
So I observe equilibrium generally, and I'm saying if you're going to start attributing a force because of disequilibrium, I would expect it to generally be in disequilibrium, you wanting to explain why everything's generally in disequilibrium. But it isn't.
Everything. I'm saying there is disequilibrium present on the Earth at all time.
Is
not
there?
everywhere universally, but it is always there at some
No,
point.
that's not what
There's
the second
always
law of
movement.
thermodynamics states. Everything's seeking equilibrium, Arwin.
Yeah, if it can, if it has the opportunity.
To disrupt
if
the
it can,
equilibrium.
and unless it has the ability to try and find equilibrium, in other words, you decrease entropy somehow, well, other than when somebody comes along and decreases entropy, you just observe things in equilibrium, or some arsehole coming along forcing it out of it and saying, well, now we need to attribute a force to this. And I'm just sick of it. No, I don't see disequilibrium everywhere. Far from it, in fact. Yeah, we can go on about cycles that we observe, but typically I observe equilibrium. Not chaos, not disorder, not things trying to find equilibrium constantly, but just equilibrium most of the time. And if not, you can apply the second law of thermodynamics. Things are trying to find equilibrium.
Gotta agree with Nathan
But
here.
that doesn't address actual motion or anything at all.
What motion? Keep doing this over and over, round and round. What motion?
Remember that the
What motion?
expression of it, the
What
expression
motion?
in the relative density, the displacement. Yeah.
It's just done it again. So we're back to there's just generally disequilibrium, is there, Arwin?
When something is in disequilibrium.
So
yes.
there we go again. So you're starting with something being in disequilibrium when that's not what we observe.
Well, if you want to observe it in a more
Arwin,
direct sense, you'll have
can
to
I ask you a
bring it
question,
in
Arwin?
disequilibrium.
So what you're saying is to observe this force, we must start by pushing something into disequilibrium. That's my point.
If you want to quickly demonstrate it, yes. But
What,
otherwise,
that
you
you've
look
done
for it.
something, that you've taken something that I observe naturally, equilibrium, displace something out of equilibrium, and then go, right, let's start ignoring all of what I've just done. Now we need to attribute a force to this.
Oh, really? Do you need to?
Well,
No.
that's what gravity
you don't
is, and that's
need
what
to.
we've got on our side at the moment, Arwin. So
But it
unless
has nothing
we're
to do
arguing
even with
amongst ourselves
relative
about
density
nothing,
theory. It
this
is
is a
just a
pointless
cycle.
conversation where you just talk over me and rumpus the shit out of the really good points that have been made.
Yeah, brilliant points, Nathan. Goodbye.
Did you just rage quit over this?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was just about to message him and say, you're arguing over a point that's moot. Doesn't matter. Our point is victorious here. Why get involved in the minutiae and fall out over it?
I don't know.
I don't really get what he was arguing. Was he arguing that the world's in a constant state of disequilibrium? And
Yes, that's what he's arguing. He's saying, like the ballers do, they
But
start
then
from
what's
the
it trying
point
to,
of
it's trying to
disequilibrium.
find equilibrium, and it finds that by being in disequilibrium? That doesn't make sense.
No, it makes no sense. That's the same. You know, you extrapolate that out to its farcical utilization in the baller argument, and you end up with them taking it to such extremes where you've got people taking bowling balls and feathers up to the top of chambers, putting them on a mechanism, having a quick release, sucking all the air out, and then dropping them. And they go, ignore all of that. That didn't happen. Right, now we need to figure out why they came down. Well, because you took them up there. No, didn't you hear me? Ignore all of that. Disequilibrium's where we're starting here. But had you have not touched the bowling ball or the feather, it would just be happily sat there doing nothing. In equilibrium. Not at the top of a vacuum chamber on a quick release. No, don't you hear me? Ignore all of that. Start with disequilibrium and we'll go from there and we'll attribute a force to it. Why?
All right. So I mean, I don't know if I don't know if this was connected. Hello, by the way, to one.
Just ask your question, Spurs. Come on, spit it out.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a question from the Ball Earth community. They want to know if things sort according to relative density, and we are inside an enclosed system. Why have the gases inside the atmosphere not sorted according to relative density?
They do.
Oh
You've seen the
my
fish
God.
tank full
How
of
many
sulfur
times
hexafluoride.
did I have to do this?
No, they don't. Cycles.
How many times do I have to present on this?
How do we say these? Sorry, John. I'm trampling all over you.
But before you do, can I get the watch page so I can share the link so we can hear this answer? Because
I'll tell you what. No, that's all right. Go back to Ball Busters into the gas pressure. Are you going to shut up?
No, but before you give the answer, it's not for my benefit. It's for a Ball Earther who asked this question, who would like to hear this answer.
No problem. Give them the link to the
I need the watch page in the chat.
Oh my God.
God.
Spurs,
are you
know this
fucking
shit.
done yet?
You're not a newbie, Spurs. You know how to do this.
Are you done yet? So, you go back to the gas pressure presentation in Ball Busters and you send them that link. And it has it step by step outlined. That's all I wanted to say.
Ballbusters 5, it's called Balls Under Pressure, the heliocentric killer.
Okay.
No one
Spurs,
wants that.
just so you're aware, we're not live at the minute. This is recorded in the after show.
That's what I was saying to you. I was asking, is it live now? I was looking.
It was live. I didn't realise he turned it off.
Okay.
That's all you have to do. It's very easy to understand.
Is there an answer? I mean, I suppose there's not a short answer to that.
There is. It's the difference between a closed static system and a closed dynamic system. In other words, like a can of compressed air, that's a closed static system. However, the Earth is a closed dynamic system. It has all kinds of cycles on it involving gases. The three main ones are, you tell me, what are the three main gas cycles?
Hold on. It's a closed dynamic system and what?
Versus a closed static system.
Carbon, nitrogen, hydrological.
Closed static system. Okay.
Yes. So the three main cycles. Go ahead, Nathan. Did you already tell him?
The hydrological cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and the carbon cycle. But Spurs can't shut up long enough to hear the answer. He's a bit like a baller.
Talking over you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to write this down. What are the three cycles? Sorry.
A hydrologic cycle.
Hydrologic cycle.
Or the water cycle, in other words.
Water.
The CO2 cycle.
CO2 cycle.
And the nitrogen cycle.
Nitrogen cycle.
Now, for you, that's all you really need. Those are the three big ones. For you, if I were you, Spurs, I'd go back and watch. You can skip through until you'll see three images come up of those three cycles, and you could just get around that area, and I explain it in quite some.
So these three cycles are in the closed dynamic system, yeah?
Yes, that's what makes it dynamic, because you have cycles. There's no cycles in a compressed can of air.
There's no cycles. Yeah.
I couldn't find it, John, to write it down and then parrot it, basically. But I'm not embarrassed to parrot excellent information. So you described the air as an inhomogeneous... What was it?
It's an entomological.
It's an entomological primitive, is it?
The atmosphere is the atmosphere is an inhomogeneous anisotropic mixture of gases.
Right. So you know this. Sorry.
Hold on, Spurs. Right, talk me through those words, please.
Say again. You want me to say them again?
Explain what those words mean. Anisotropic. Do you want to start there?
The it's all mixed up instead of one congenial glob. It's not a single entity, in other words. Inhomogeneous, homogenized milk. What do they do to get homogenized milk?
You get two male cows and they play with each other.
Let's keep this consistent. There's going to be people like I'm playing dumb for a reason.
No, it's just all mixed up. That's the easy way. That's the bald tard. I don't even think they'd understand that. So it's just all mixed up. That's it.
Right.
That's the best.
So when it's described as being in layers because you've got a pressure gradient, that's nonsense. You've not got like a sandwich of different layers of gases. It's, as John puts it, all mixed up.
John, is there a dynamic cycle in a closed thermos? Just curious.
Shout out to George Netanyahu.
Air is not the atmosphere.
Yeah, shout out to Rumpus.
Shout out retracted.
So you know this closed static system. What is in this? Is there anything in this?
Closed static system's like a tire. You haven't got like plants and shit growing at the bottom of a tire making it a dynamic system. It's just one gas, regular, even, right? Well, in a similar way, you could put two gases in to a can, and if they were of different densities, they'd separate, right? Well, that's a static system with in that instance multiple gases, but that's not what we're in. You just have to look at the clouds to know that's not the case, right, Spurs?
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. I'm just looking. So the static doesn't really have all of these dynamic things moving around, like you've explained. That's all.
No. So static. You know what static means, right? Nothing happening.
Yeah, it doesn't move. Yeah.
Stationary or whatever.
Going on. Yeah.
So a static system's got nothing going on.
Yeah.
It's isotropic.
Isotropic is static. Anisotropic is moving around and doing stuff.
Anisotropic, yeah.
Anisotropic.
Right.
Okay. That's what I was fishing for, John.
Okay.
Okay. Learn something new every day. So
yeah.
Isotropic, static, not doing anything.
This is what they want to. They're looking. I mean, because like I said, I've said many times, for me, they accept flat Earth, but they just want they just want to know, well, what is it then? How do you explain this then? Well, what does if it's not that, then what is it? So, the more answers you give them, the more that they come around to this understanding.
Spurs, have you heard that gravity is not literally a force, but you can act like it is? Have you heard that?
Yeah, I saw some today. Yeah, that guy. I forgot his name.
That guy, yeah. That guy, all right.
You need to drum this into your head. The minute they say gravity, your next line out your mouth is gravity's not a force. Because George Musser said so.
Okay. Let's get that down. Got that down.
They'll jump all over you when you say that, though.
George, they'll say, you're taking them out of context. George.
So did you get
Did he actually say that, though, or was he?
No, he said
it about five times. So, yeah.
Context. It's a statement. Gravity is not a force. There is no all the context is there. The gravity, the not being a force. What's
yeah, exactly right. Then where are we not getting this?
No, I know that, but that's what they would say. Like everything that we've told them that their scientists are saying. They say taken out of context.
Well, their scientist
Spurs,
said it himself.
let me tell you what your reaction should be. Laugh at them.
Yeah, you're forgetting to add a factor in, Spurs. That those people are asking you this, they're retarded.
No, I know it was great today because there was a new guy on there, a new ball earther, and he gave an explanation for gravity as the cause of just about everything. I said, stop. You haven't even proven gravity or the cause of gravity, but you're saying gravity is the cause. I said, we know the cause of any other natural phenomena, like weather and things like this, but we don't know, so he came around. It was amazing. He was like, okay, so, we can agree that at this point, we don't have an actual experiment that we can remove all the variables for the Cavendish for mass attracting mass. So it was good. It's a shame he wasn't here or something like that.
You mean Reverend John Mitchell Cavendish?
Yeah, pastor. Yes.
Yeah, Reverend John Mitchell. Don't forget that, Reverend John Mitchell Cavendish. And I think a lot of problems here is the lack of a definition of a force. Now they think they got the definition, but what all this confusion comes down to is the definition that they think they do have is not force. That's the problem. That's where all these arguments, not only between the ballers, but as you've seen before, between Arwen and Nathan, and pretty much all the arguments that I've heard, that's what it really boils down to. Define force.
Yeah, what's it? That's what I was exactly, because Anthony had used, well, they can explain it with electromagnetism. It's like, what's the it? Where are you getting the it from?
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, define force. Come on, guys.
And inhomogeneous?
What I wanted to say is the Cavendish. Would we agree if we were able to move all the variables, atmosphere, what we thought was the cause of the balls moving, would that be acceptable? Like if they did it on the moon or in a vacuum or somewhere where variables could be moved and manipulated. Would that to prove gravity, I mean? Not that I'm saying gravity is a real thing. I'm just saying that the test itself, if we're on a flat Earth, we're trying to prove something like mass attracting mass. So would there be an experiment to prove?
No, because we're talking natural science. You can't remove nature. Right?
So there's nowhere, anywhere that mass attracts mass. So when we see the moon...
No, wait a second. What's mass?
No, I don't know. That's what I'm asking. I'm asking this idea that there's an attraction of some kind, right?
It's an idea.
Got destroyed today.
To define it.
Yeah.
Have them define mass. They can't do it. Of course, you have to have a little acumen behind you. Don't just ask them to define mass without knowing the answer.
That's when they put lipstick on a molecule so it can attract another molecule.
Right.
Is Spurs listening? Now, when you ask these questions, make sure you already have the answer, okay?
Yeah, I mean, because like what I'm saying and what I'm proposing is that Cavendish, if mass were attracting mass, there would be a way of finding this out. If this were true.
Yeah, and if my aunt had balls, should be my uncle.
No, if mass, if it really did attract mass, like if this were a real thing.
What's mass?
What?
What's
like
mass?
Well.
See the problem? That's what I'm trying to get you out of this. I'm trying to get you to break everything down and define your terms. Because you're saying mass. I'm thinking one thing. You're thinking another. The people on the panel are thinking totally different things, right? See, that's how we communicate. So we have to define our terms. So when you're talking about an apple,
well, mass,
I'm not thinking about a banana.
Mm-hmm.
That's where miscommunication occurs, correct?
Well, isn't mass dense matter or atoms together?
Huh?
Nope.
So you've whistled past the graveyard because you interrupted at the point that he made, Spurs. So I'm going to try and reiterate it. how can I rephrase this slightly? You know when they give you a maths equation, so F equals ma, for example.
Yep.
When John says we've got to agree on terms, when they put that in front of you, and you're trying to, in the spirit of what John has said, agree on terms, what would you do? So what would be the process that you think you would need to employ in order to, quote, agree on terms when someone puts F equals ma in front of you?
Right, we need to define what we mean, right?
Yeah, so F equals ma, Spurs. It's a practice run.
Yeah, so like I say, you have to define what F is, what M is, and what A is, yeah?
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. So define F, define M, and define A, if you can, please.
Perfect. Got a big smile on my face, Spurs. Very big smile.
Right. I mean, again, it's understood, I hope. I hope that's right. But, yeah, I mean, it's just trying to get them to see the
try
errors
it.
of their way, right?
Try it. With the example that you were about to do when you interrupted. That's why we did this. So, what's M?
No, I get it now. I see where you're coming from.
No, we're going to actually do it. What's M? What does it actually? What does the M stand for? First of all, what's the M mean?
Well, it's force, mass, acceleration. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So M is mass, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think? While we're again in the spirit of agreeing on terms, what comes next? So we know what it means.
Oh, let's define. Let's look it up. Let's look at mass.
Right. So let's do
I
that.
have to look it up, right?
Yeah. So let's do that. So it's best not to ask questions that you don't already know the answers to, Spurs. So in this instance,
I said what I said, but I told you this already. I said it was it said it's a body of matter. It says with no specific shape.
Yeah, and we interrupted you and said no, that's a mole.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to go through the process with you so that you understand this argument. You know, you've got to. One of us has got to play devil's advocate here, and I'm trying to force you to do it.
I understand, but no, I don't really like arguing for the board side or doing it like that. But you know, I'm just trying to. Like I said, the goal for me is just to nullify their questions. So their questions, like we have answers for them, and it stops them wondering, well, how to. Because, like I say, most of them, I don't think they really believe in the ball.
Hold on, Spurs. Don't whistle past that. Good point. You want to know how to get to the nub of their argument and destroy it. That's what you're saying, right?
Right.
Right. This is how you do that. Because often you'll find that their argument falls at this point. At the point that you try to agree on terms. That's why we're taking you by the hand and trying to get you to do it.
I see. So they have to define force, mass, and acceleration.
We're just one at a time. Because mass was what we were talking about, let's stick with that. So you've given me what you think colloquially it means. Mm-hmm. Now let's actually get to the actual defining of it. It just means Google searching, basically, see what you come up with. I mean, while you're doing that, I actually want you to go through the process, but just so it's kept a bit more brief, you'll find two different definitions. You'll find inertia and you'll find mole. Those will be the two different definitions.
Yeah.
Well, if you've got two, well, that means that falls on its arse immediately. If you're defining something and you want it to be useful, you've got to have a specific term that you can agree upon in the first instance. And in the case of mass, you've got two. So you can't.
Yeah, but if you want to play the advocate like that, then you know we have to be strict. We're not talking about mass, Sunday mass. We're talking about the scientific term.
I was waiting for you to do that. Perfect.
No?
So if we're going to agree in terms of science, you have very specific definitions of things. They're defined. So if it's not defined, Spurs, because you've got two definitions, does that sound scientific?
Hold on. Assign two scientific definitions, you're saying?
No. To be scientific, you'd need to have a very specific term. Defined rigorously. That's what we're trying to do right now, aren't we? But what I've told you, because presumably, I bet a pound you haven't actually Google searched this, have you?
I've got it right in front of me right now. The first
Right.
one, a large body of matter with no definite shape. The second one, a large number of people, objects crowded together. It's got adjective involving or affecting a large number of
Okay,
people.
no,
And
you
it's
don't
got
need to
another
go through
one-
the... Yeah, fine, that's one definition. Now try and look down the other definitions that you'll get. And
We've got
eventually you'll come to
Define
one...
Mass Chemistry Dictionary. Click on that. Got it right here. Of course I've got it. You know, again, I've been looking for... So that this is the chemical. So this is like a science. So mass is a measure of the amount of matter. So this is the one I think they are describing, you see? So this is what they mean. They're talking about...
Go ahead. What's the definition?
What is mass?
State the definition again.
Read it. Okay, so mass is a measure of the amount of matter in an object. Mass is usually measured in grams or kilograms. Mass measures the quantity of matter regardless of both its location in the universe and the gravitational force applied to it.
It's wrong.
But that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not, again, you know, I'm just...
Listen to what I'm telling you. From the Royal Society of Chemistry. Studies have shown that the amount of substance is often incorrectly identified with mass. So that's wrong. What you just described was a mole.
Yeah, so that was the first definition. That's the third time we've said it, but you will find upon closer examination. So if you were said globehead at the moment, Spurs, you'd have to go and find a different definition because that one's wrong. That's a mole.
Right.
So,
And now you got problems because you got multiple definitions for a single term. That's an equivocation fallacy. You don't even have to go through it.
Hold on, John. Hold on, Spurs. Hold on, Spurs. Spurs, did that sink in?
Yes, but all I'm looking at is how they're looking at it. Yeah,
no, that tells me it didn't sink in.
Whenever we speak to ball lurkers, do they have a definition of
Spurs, we're taking our time with you, and
you're acting like
now you're talking over me, mate. Spurs, we're trying to take you through it. You've asked us to help you undo their arguments. We're taking you through the process. We get to the coup de grace, the conclusion, and you go, yeah, I get it, but I'm trying to argue with Globers, telling me instantly you haven't understood the point.
No, because you're saying that they don't have a definition, and I'm thinking that they may say that's that we do have a definition, and that definition would be the one about matter, something dense.
And I just frigging pummeled it.
Yeah, so that's incorrect because fourth time we've said it, Spurs. It's not sinking in. That is the definition of a mole. Now, at this point...
Spurs, just play one side. Just be a baller. Don't worry about anything else.
Yeah, you got to play along, Spurs. At one point, I was just considering me doing it, but I just don't think I could lead you enough to get you to ask me the right questions. So I've got to get you to play along and just be that baller. My point being that at the point we say no wrong, that's a mole. Okay. Defined rigorously also and used to define things in that specific category. So you will then go away, frantically Google search to find another definition of mass.
Which is what I was doing right now, looking for another one.
Excellent.
That's the problem.
Right.
Did you see the problem? As soon as you try and go to find another definition, that ipso facto means that there's multiple definitions for this term. Right? That's the problem already. Before you even get to the other definition, which is a train wreck anyway, I'm going to pummel. Don't you see the inherent problem with that?
This is
First, the next question is, what's a mole? Go look that up.
No. Yeah, that is true. But I want Spurs to recognise the main point at this stage and go, right. So when they say mass is the amount of stuff inside something, and I point out that it's a mole, and they go, well, no, it's actually, and then give a different explanation, whatever that may be. Spurs was hopefully Google searching frantically. Then you can stop the argument right there, because it must be rigorously defined, and you've got more than one definition.
It's called an
Cut them off at
equivocation
the pass,
fallacy.
Spurs. That's the name of the game.
Called an equivocation fallacy, right? Define an equivocation fallacy.
Right. I'm just looking up this mole that Nathan
Okay,
keeps
you're
talking
looking up a
about.
mole. It's using two or more definitions for a single term within a single argument.
How are you spelling it, Nathan?
Say again?
How are you spelling it?
MOLE, and
Mole.
type in
Yeah.
next to it.
Yeah,
You
mole.
gotta have this. You gotta have discrete language to do science. A word can mean two things.
Yeah, not the little creature that burrows under the ground, right?
Right.
But I do want to give you the other half of the argument, because the chances are you'll then come across a ball-tard armed with this information, and they'll give you a different definition of mass. And unless you can pummel that, you end up accepting that as what mass is. I just don't want that to happen either, Spurs.
Is this in chemistry? Is what you're saying? What you're describing? Yeah.
Chemistry. Listen, every other science, whether it be chemistry, biology, all the real sciences, biochemistry, all fall under physics. Let's get that straight right now.
Okay.
Do you understand this?
Yeah. It's in the natural and physical world. Yeah, it's understood.
Yeah, everything falls under physics.
Okay. Well, like I said, I'm just looking, to give the answer. They have questions. They don't seem to want to leave there where they are, and just frustrating because they think, oh well, you won't answer this, you won't give us an answer for that. If you can't just say. And this is how close they are to becoming flat earthers. It's like they just want answers. They want to be told, where do we live, or where do we live? And if it's not a ball, what is it? Things like that.
What are you, a Jehovah's Witness for flat Earth?
No, but one has to feel bad. You're telling somebody something, and not giving. So it's like taking away something.
Are you part of the 144,000?
He wants to convert them.
I'm worried about giving them a little teddy bear model so that they feel better.
I think Spurs is
It's an awful thing, right? You're taking away something that they've believed in all their lives, and now
you're giving them the truth.
Exactly, and I don't feel bad about that at all.
How they handle it, that's up to them, dude. It's not on you to hold them and coddle them as they have a mental breakdown.
And that's why we're in the first place. Are we just like say, ha, the earth is flat, you're an idiot, you don't get it, we're the best, we're so wise? Or is it like,
that doesn't sound all that bad.
It, they can
yeah, I was going to say that's generally my outlook,
away.
Spurs. I'm at one with this. I'm quite comfortable with this. So yeah, that would be my outlook, but that's not useful for you. If you're looking to convert people, well, number one, you've got a fool's errand, because the people you're coming up against are the people defending the lie.
No, I'm not trying to convert. It's not going to happen like that. What will happen is they will see the errors of their way. So I won't make them flat earthers, but they'll be globe deniers for sure, because they can't.
you ain't gonna do that.
I don't think so, Spurs. I mean, the people that say, yeah, I used to be a globetard and fighting against this, but then 2 weeks later I had this particular epiphany and I realised it's all lies and it's flat and we're not spinning and blah, blah, blah. But normally it's like a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months at a stretch while they really explore it. But generally there's an end and they say, yeah, I realised the truth at the end of it. These people that we're talking about, they're not those people. They're going to vehemently defend the lie, because their battle isn't with us. Their battle is with themselves in most of the cases. They're trying to convince themselves the lie is true.
There are a handful of those. It's like a little...
Exactly, Spurs. And we don't have to give them some little teddy bear model to hold on to, or answers that they need to hold on to so that they can feel better. Okay?
No, look, let me show you what's happened. We've gone from guys who were 100% in their beliefs or what they thought was true. Absolute true. Of course it's a ball, 100%. Through talking with these guys, they're now down to 99%. Some of them are now not so sure. Some of them are like, okay, we don't know.
Are they telling you this?
Yes, in the Discord. But I got Mr. Scott to say the other day, okay, we're not 100% sure that the Earth, about what we're saying, with 95%.
M.
Yeah.
Scott Veach. M. Scott Veach.
M.
Scott,
Scott Veach.
I can get them. Listen,
The
today.
astronaut?
He's a
So today,
retard.
hold on a minute.
Oh
So
my
today,
God.
Pure was like, yeah, I'm 100%. And I was like, but none of your other ballers in this room, Pure, are 100%. So he was on his own for ages going, yeah, I'm 100%. And I was like, but look at none of them. The room was full, 30, 40, 50 people, whatever. And none of them were, because usually when I say something, they all jump all over it and go, oh, that's wrong. They all jump together. And like I was saying, Pure, your people here are not 100%, right? And he just had to think about it, right? And I was like, well, Mr. Scott said he's not 100%. He's like, oh, I don't care what he says. I know for a fact it's, a board site, So what happens is, yeah, there are people like Pure like that, but generally I can get most of the people in there to be like, wow, this is just the best, what we have so far. And, they're not, there's doubt. As long as you can raise doubt in their beliefs, that's the beginning stages. And a lot of them have doubt now because they
Well, the
ask, well,
problem is that they have beliefs. So you're going down a trail here. You need to do your homework, for one. You need to get into these specific arguments. You need to watch Ball Busters, right?
You're right. I do
Because
need to
I've
be
already
a bit
went
more
over it.
technical.
I've been doing this for 3.5 years. I don't, and you're asking me these questions. I'm sitting there. How many times have I got to repeat all this?
Hey, Spurs, can I ask you a question?
I've got an answer for that. 10.
It's more than 10.
Yeah, 10.
I systematically go through, I break it down to a target audience of somewhere around 6th graders, right? And I go through all these arguments. Haven't you seen these Spurs? What you need to do is you need to get all these presentations out. You need to get a notebook, right? And then you need to start writing this stuff out and then solidifying that in your mind so you know each angle of this argument. Or whatever argument it may be. That's how you need to do it. This is homework. You got to do work.
You're right. It needs to be studied. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey,
Right.
Spurs. Hey, Spurs. How does a person go from 100% acceptance or belief in something to 90? What has to take place for that person to drop 10%?
Oh, I'm telling you, it's amazing. Like,
No. Don't tell me. Just tell me, what does it take? One or two words, not a story.
just takes a conversation in finding out what they really believe, because most of the time they speak for the crowd. Oh, we've done this, I've done this, we've done, so it's all about we. So when you ask them about you, what do you know? If it was just, I was put in the position of, it was just me and you on an island, and there's no one else, how would we know we're on a board? What would we be, what would we do? We see the horizon, we assume flat, we see flat, where do we go from there? So we talk about it, we discuss it. So when you remove them from the crowd mentality, so I single them out, even with the crowd, I'm like, look, let's just, me and you, discuss this. How are we, as in we?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how you get them.
All right.
All right, that's fine. That's a too long of a story. Listen, I don't mean to say, I don't mean to be rude, Spurs, but you need to do your homework on these things and then try it again.
No, I agree. Yeah, I agree absolutely. There's so many answers nowadays as well.
I will let 10th Man get in there, but although it's a shameless plug for my own show, the Ballbusters shows are superb. Now, prior to me plugging Ballbusters, I would have been plugging Science versus Pseudoscience. And prior to plugging Science versus Pseudoscience, I'd have been plugging Science versus Scientism. All pretty much the same information. It's a retelling of exactly the same information with a few extra bits added in here and there, some refinement here and there. But the formatting of Ballbusters has been a real hit. It's very digestible because it's in a conversation format. And I'm not going to undermine the amount of praise it's had. Loads of people have been complimenting Ballbusters because they're coming back to me and going, oh, I understand this now, because they've digested the information. So as much as, I'll probably stop recommending Science versus Pseudoscience quite as much, unless someone wants just the totally concise information. Ballbusters is very digestible. Just watch the Ballbusters show.
Oh,
Number 5,
John, I have a request for you, actually. You were speaking, and again, this is just from, from their side. So Jem, he's made a rebuttal. You may have seen it about the scientific method. You should.
Are you kidding me?
I don't know. No, hold on. again, I've already spoken with him about it. I said I was like, but I won't give my opinion until you've seen it actually. But he's basically saying that there are physicists, there are professionals who say there is more than one method.
All right,
Methods.
let me stop you right there. Listen, you're listening to a person in GIMP Panda that it's questionable that he even passed high school, right? So why are you even listening to him? What's the argument? There's more than one scientific method? No problem. You have a citation? These crayon munchers don't even know what citations are. They don't know what references are. They never handed in a research paper, right? So when they give you a citation, do you understand that citations themselves have to be supported? So no problem. There's a different scientific method. Show us.
No, I agree. I mean, I've said all of
method.
this and more.
Number one, here's
what
the question
would be
that you asked.
interesting is
here's the question that you asked.
This for me. This is a
here's
fantastic.
The question,
this is nothing.
Here's the question that you asked. You know, here's one of your problems, Spurs. You need to be able to listen and shut your pie hole. That's one problem I see.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay, you need to listen. So all you have to do with idiots like this is say, okay, do you need experiment in science? So whichever answer that they give you, I'm prepared to skull fuck them, whether it be yes or no. So you need to know each side of the argument. So obviously you must know what an experiment is, right? If they say yes, we need an experiment in the scientific method, then you say, what are the three constituent parts of an experiment? The answer to that question is independent, dependent, and controlled variables. Well, where do you get the independent and dependent variables? Well, you get them from the hypothesis. So we need a hypothesis in experiment too. So what do you need to get a hypothesis? Half of the hypothesis is a dependent variable. Where do we get that from? Oh, we have to observe a phenomenon. You see how I just did that? So anytime you dance around a topic and you get pseudoscientists saying that there's many scientific methods, well, come up with one, but each have to have those three steps. I don't care. You could put flowers around it and put Cool Whip all over it.
No, understood. I mean, I was thinking, John, I was thinking you're going to love it for your next show. Is what all I was saying, that you're going to be able to highlight, okay, the issues with people saying this type of rhetoric, right? If somebody can go around saying, because I said to him, because one of the quotes were, there are as many methods as there are individuals. Now that I was like, I said, Jem, how is this possible? How can you have a different method as many as different individuals? Okay, so again, this is not something that you would look at.
To show it to you.
It's not something that you would look at and say, okay, I agree. It's more to look at to say, look,
calm down, slow down. Every citation basically is just somebody saying something, correct?
Okay.
If they can't support it, everything comes down. It's just a baseless assertion. I don't care who said it, unless you can support it. So this idiot, probably a pseudoscientist that said this, no problem. Give us one of the methods.
I know, John. This is what I'm trying to say to you.
Okay.
If you bring this up in your next video and say, look, this is what science is saying today, that there are various methods. Well, you can say, well, how? How are there various methods when we're trying to find out something about that? This is the point of the video. You should review it as a
Spurs. He doesn't need to do it in the next video. We've said this plenty of times. We say it every day on the show. It's not a new thing, man.
Oh no! But what's happened here? Jem seemed to think this is a rebuttal to the latest arguments from Quantum Eraser, and I'm simply saying, Jem, this is not. And they're saying yes.
Jem Panda still thinks somebody drove a dune buggy on the moon. What the fuck?
Birds humping. We want to see the birds humping experiment. That's what we want to see. That's what we're waiting for.
Spurs, you know when John just said, when you cite somebody for saying something that's just an assertion, we want to see it. And look on screen, I'm sharing my screen now with GeoStreamer, and I just so happen to be making the exact same point. I'm saying to Geo at the top, Geo's trying to say that I've not done this, I've not done that, whatever, and I've said I don't give a shit what you think. So you won't address the points I made, you just wave them off completely. And I said there is a specific reason that I used the device I did. You don't have to like it, but you can't debunk me with your interpretations and opinions. I don't need to address any of your points. I did science. You're doing rhetoric. I specifically use that device and salt for a reason that you don't understand but claim you do. You haven't invalidated anything as you haven't demonstrated anything. And then he said, so you're unaware of what parts per million actually is, and that there is a difference between molar ppm and mass ppm. And I said, I don't care what you preach. You cannot debunk the test that I performed unless you do something to show that what I did not cause the egg to move. If you think that using a different instrument will change anything, great. That will be your hypothesis. Let's see you do it. Until you do, fuck off. And then he said, well, the device I would use would be blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. Saying it and doing it is the difference between pseudoscience and science.
Okay, wait a second. Who are you talking about? GeoStreamer?
Yeah.
This is a master's degree in chemistry holder, and Betty drug him around by his incoherent short hairs, right? With one simple question. You had a master's degree in chemistry student say that equations are science. Betty challenged him and said, okay, germ theory is science. Correct. Give us the equation for germ theory. This idiot started looking for the equation for germ theory. Why are you even speaking to him?
Because he's attacking the...
He's a moron! This is what... Here, let me say this again. You got Tiger Woods walking down the 18th fairway at the Masters. And then you have Elmer Fudd over in the gallery. And Elmer Fudd is heckling Tiger Woods. Is Tiger Woods even going to look over?
No.
The prosecution rests.
Nathan, are we still recording at this point?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
still
just well
trying to
noisy.
finish
Sorry,
my
that's why I've not
first.
interrupted much.
We're still live at 5.
Was that a yes or a no?
If you can hear me, I do want to talk to Anthony and John if there's a gaps at some point.
Oh, yeah, it's 4 more hours. We got to get back to George Musser.
Yeah, definitely. But
right.
before we do, Nathan, are
All
you
right.
still recording, yes or no?
Yes, I did say that. It's just Eleanor was screaming her head off. My wife's been kind enough to take her out of the room. I'll just get in what I want to ask. I need to speak to you after, Anthony, although I'm pretty sure you're aware of that anyway. John?
Yes?
Is there any chance you can literally just read the message that you sent to me? It'll take about 3 or 4 minutes.
The whole exposition?
Yeah. I'll trim it out. So basically, my intention is to trim this section out and put it as a separate section as a response. Now, on the show, we were saying, oh, I'm sure John will want to go through it as a whole piece, but there's no need. Literally, you can just read what you've sent to me and Anthony and presumably quite a few other people, and that would serve perfectly. I can just trim that out then.
Yeah, I guess I could do that. You want me to go start now?
Yeah, in your own time.
Yeah. So I was up late last night, and because we had some another bad storm front come through, it looks like we can't get rid of these guys. We got another one this afternoon, man. So I didn't have anything to do, and I was in a message thread. I think it might have been on one of Anthony's videos, and somebody said the George Musser video is posted. So I said, yeehaw. So I went over there and I start listening to it. Now listen, I think George Musser, he's an amiable chap. There's no doubt about it. I kind of like him. But his scientific literacy is hovering just below 2nd grade. And I knew this was going to happen because if he undertook, even if as soon as he said a word regarding this subject, he was through. His foot was going to go in his mouth. So I just, got the popcorn and just sat back and listened to it. So let me go through some of the things I picked out. I didn't pick everything out. All right. There wasn't enough time. I just picked the elephants in the room out. There might be some more elephants. I left the whole Eratosthenes experiment between these doofuses alone because that speaks for itself. So let's go over some of these. George Musser. Gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. So what the fuck, dude? So an amoeba is a chartreuse windsock. So an amoeba isn't a chartreuse windsock, but we can think of it as a chartreuse windsock. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, man. So right there, I posted this message onto Craig's underneath Craig's video, and he pinned it. I just stopped there, and then I went on and conducted my business. I figured that's all I needed. I mean, because this is ridiculous. We could essentially stop right here. However, I didn't. So the next one, George Musser. It looks at a progression of scientific ideas. And I said, what in the world? What is a scientific idea? How do they differ from just plain old everyday ideas? Such as you're a double-speaking, fork-tongued pretender clown idea. How about that? How does a scientific idea differ from that idea? The next one, George Musser. Even Newton and his contemporaries had a real problem with that law, namely that it described gravity's effects, but it really described how gravity works. And Newton actually in his own life tried to develop, unsuccessfully as it turns out, an understanding of how gravity works. What in the world? Number one, laws describe the whats and the ises. They never explain. Scientific theories explain the hows and the whys. And in his rhetoric, he said, describe the how. Well, professor, descriptions only deal with the whats and ises. Explanations only deal with the hows and whys. Never the twain shall meet. So he's got a problem, not only with the science here, but what descriptions and explanations mean. We're back to that. I mean, I learned this, third, fourth grade at worst? George Musser, the next one. Einstein's role was to fill in that mechanism. Well, what in the world? Professor, scientific theories never, ever, ever attempt to mechanize laws. If they did, they wouldn't be friggin' laws anymore. For fuck's sake. Watch. Post the mechanism for entropy, the second law of thermodynamics. By the way, you'd fail 5th grade general science and 2nd grade mathematics. The next one, George E. Musser. The thing is about Newton's law, you can't take it literally. What? So we can't take equations literally anymore, Georgie. Thanks. Priceless. The next one, George E. Musser. This is used routinely by NASA. He's talking about Newton's law. Is used routinely by NASA to do its missions. By just all of us, whenever we act, we understand the formations of planets and so forth. I mean, what in the world? Please show how you use the now debunked Newton's law in the formations of planets. Please couch your horse shit, debunk law explanation, laughing out loud, in the context of Boyle's gas law, the second law of thermodynamics, and Jean's mass force. The next one, this is one of my favorites, and I think I put some time hacks in here for you. So we got George E. Musser at 840. Einstein came along and said, what could cause this force or apparent force? And Craig at 1144 said, we still don't fully know the complete cause of gravity. George E. Musser's response, oh no, not at all. What in the world? Real, actual scientific theories identify the cause. That's their primary mission in life. Priceless. You two bozos are abject fuckwits. By the way, you'd both fail 5th grade general science. And P.S. since you two bozos just admitted there is no cause for fairy tale gravity, then ipso facto, there is no scientific theory of gravity. It's just that simple. And apparent force? So a not real force, Is a not real force a force? Is a not real donkey a donkey? Goodness gracious. The next one, Georgie Musser. You can derive the Newtonian force law from the Einsteinian field equations of general relativity. What in the world? Really? Go ahead and derive a force of a debunk law from a non-force, non-scientific theory. And please, can you make achromatic rainbow soup sandwiches too? We're going to be interested in that. Craig, he basically says, he's talking about Anthony. He basically says that Newtonian gravity and Einsteinian gravity are mutually exclusive. George Musser, that's certainly wrong. Einstein would have never said that. What in the world? No, he surely wouldn't have, because he was a doofus. I said that. More importantly, I can easily show it. Number one, Newton's is allegedly a law. That's debunked. Einstein's is allegedly a scientific theory. That's well, you can't debunk a non-existent scientific theory anyway. So, number two, Newtonian gravity is a force. Einsteinian gravity is not a force. Number three, they're not even in the same geometry, for crying out loud. Newtonian gravity is Euclidean 3 space, whereas Einsteinian gravity is Pseudo-Riemannian 4 space. Number four, Newtonian gravity, the law of superposition holds. Einsteinian gravity, the law of superposition doesn't hold. Number five, Newtonian gravity speaks to instantaneous actions at a distance. Einsteinian gravity is limited to the speed of light. Married and bachelors have more in common than the debunked Newtonian and Einstein's fairy tales. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Yeah, that was a great read when I first woke up this morning.
I mean, listen, you don't need a science education. You don't need rocket science here. Just Launchpad security just to listen to them. This is a joke.
Apparently he described it as being magic quite a few times.
He did. I kind of rolled past that one because he also said magic in the citation that I gave to Anthony. I've been using that for years.
When he says he snapped the wand in two, where does he say magic? Oh, not a magical force, right?
Yeah, it's in the citation. He snapped. He called Newtonians. And listen, I told you this before, and I'm starting to go down a road that I shouldn't have. This is not Newtonian gravity. Newton himself said not to ascribe it to him. So I'm sorry that I did it through this whole presentation. I was just quoting what he had said during the presentation. There is no Newtonian gravity. Okay, let's just hold the horses right there. Newton has nothing to do with this.
Well, let's preface that by let's add to that by saying it's Reverend John Mitchell / Cavendish gravity.
And it's not even them, because Cavendish never calculated G. Never. This G showed up 207 years after Newton died. So, and it was by C.V. Boyce, Charles Vernon Boyce. Look it up. So I don't know what these people are talking about. They don't know Newton's law, for one. They don't know that Newton distanced himself. He said plainly, do not ascribe this bunk to me. And you'd have to be out of your mind to even consider it. Did he say that or did he not?
Yeah, don't ascribe gravity to me. He's pretty clear about it.
Yeah, so I'm not ascribing it to him. He's got other issues we could deal with later, but with gravity, no way. No chance. It's not Newton's. It's plain as day. So
you mean gravity, the force that is literally not a force, but we can act like it is? That one?
Yeah, that one. And you're going to have to define a force. Like I said earlier, all these problems are stemming from the definition of a force. That's where the problem stems. And then you get branches off of this thing because no one has defined the term, right? Everyone's got a different idea, like I was saying before, and you get sidetracked into all these incoherent arguments and you lose the whole point. So define a force. If you go back to Newton, you're going to have a big damn problem, son.
Well, George Musser did. He called it the M, magic.
Magic. Well, thank you very much for that, John. That was a brilliant dissection of George Musser on Fight the Flat Earth.
I can't wait for the Eratosthenes experiment. I mean, he did talk about that. I felt that I didn't need to talk about it. Number one, Eratosthenes never performed an experiment. That's the big one. So how is he doing? How is he performing another experiment based off a non-experiment? So what questions are people going to ask George Musser and Fat the Fat Earth?
Where are you getting your R value?
No, he said experiment. My first question is, what are the three constituents of an experiment? I'll bet you George doesn't even know. He's so far removed from his thesis with the convection currents on Venus. I'll guarantee you he doesn't know what the scientific method is.
Well, just so it's part of this recording, because I'm going to trim this out. So, independent variable, dependent variable, and controls.
Yep. Those are three parts of a scientific experiment, right? Well, where'd you get the independent and dependent variables? Oh, the hypothesis. So we actually need a hypothesis also. So you say, where did we get the dependent variable? Well, that's your observed phenomenon. Oh, so we need the observed phenomenon. So those three are the indispensable steps of the scientific method. I say again, observe a phenomena, hypothesis, experiment. You could put anything else around it or before it that you want. You could conjure anything you want, pseudoscientists, pretender clown muppets. But those three have to be there. You hearing me, clowns? Unbelievable. I would even have to say this.
Well, thanks again.
You're welcome.
Perfect. A little pause afterwards as well without my kid making any noise. Enough to be trimmed out and stuck up with a title that says something to the effect of George Musser smashed.
R.I.P. Rest in peace, George Musser.
Chocolate, you realise how big today is for us.
Again, I keep
Dude, I've
correcting
been
people about
smiling
this.
for like
I'm
4
sorry, I'm
hours now.
interrupting straight away as soon as the conversation started up. I'm really sorry. Not rest in peace. He's not going to get any rest over this. You're joking, right? He's not going to get to rest and there won't be any peace. You're joking.
It's just glorious.
Yeah.
I don't understand the psychology. How they can claim victory on something that fucking kicks them in the bollocks 5 times. I mean, literally, it said in that thing, John, when we done a search, or I did a search for how many times the phrase.
Wait a second. Who's claiming victory and victory over what?
Craig, Fight the Flat Earth, Craig claiming victory. But in that interview we had with him, I searched for the part that I was looking for that said that gravity is not a force. 5 times it was said in a. Is it a 12-minute interview?
Is he delusional?
That's what I said. Don't worry about the delusions
Definitely.
of idiots. That's exactly what I said. Don't worry about it. He's an idiot. He's delusional. Don't worry about it.
I don't know what to say, Anthony. Victory, an incoherent second grader could have listened to that and then walked away rolling his eyes. Right? He sounded like a politician, for crying out loud.
That's exactly what I thought.
A
Who said
disaster.
that? Someone else on the
I was
panel
like,
said
what?
that. Who said he sounded like a politician?
Me. Oh, somebody said he gave a politician's answer.
Yeah, someone
Yeah,
else.
he was double speaking the entire time. It was the greatest political speech I've ever heard.
I'm sorry, George, but you really mucked this up. And now that you stepped into this arena, you're fair game, sir. Even though I like you, I think you're an amiable chap. You get ready for the whirlwind. You brought it on yourself, sir. Thanks.
I'll give it to him. He did seem like a nice enough guy. I'll give that to him.
Yeah, Charles Flat Earth Math seems like a really nice guy.
But yeah,
I had it out with that crayon muncher the other day under Anthony's video. He decided to post after about 8 months. After he gave a long dissertation to somebody on a video about double-blind and single-blind chemistry experiments. I mean, this is what we're dealing with, people. This is what we're dealing with here, right? I mean, this is so unbelievably absurd. It's wiki parroters. So you got wiki Discovery Channel parroters. They just come out, they just, from MSU, Make Shit Up University, they just make shit up. They don't really care. They just move on to the next point. That's what we're dealing with here. Most of these people have not graduated high school. That's who you're dealing with here. So I don't know.
He violated the law of non-contradiction when he said there cannot be in reality a non-force force.
Yeah, if it's a fictitious force, then it's not a force. It's like the Coriolis force. It's not a force. It's an apparent force. A not actual force. A non-force, if you will. So if it's a fictitious force, it's not a force!
These people, I'll tell you what, man. This Coriolis force, it's been 3 years now. I have yet to hear a single baller that understands what it is. They bring up directions. They bring up latitudes. What on earth are they talking about? The Coriolis force can be easily demonstrated on a merry-go-round. Where's there any directions? Where's the latitude or longitude lines on a merry-go-round? I mean, it's preposterous.
What did fight the flat Earth response to gravity not being a force? What did he say?
It got quoted. You time-stamped it. His response to it. Can you just read out the time-stamped response from Craig? It was about 11 minutes or something.
What was that? Could you say? I didn't hear him.
Just so we're not taken out of context. So Craig understood.
Yeah, we've got a quote.
Yeah.
Can you bring up your dissection of it, John? And you, about halfway through it, you timestamp a quote from George Musser and a quote from Craig, and Craig's quote sums up or is an answer to Spurs' question.
About the cause of gravity? Is that the one you're looking for?
Yeah. He said, what's his reaction when he finds out it's not a force?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yep. George Musser at 8 minutes, 40 seconds. Einstein came along and said, what could cause this force or apparent force? And Craig at 11:44 said, we still don't fully know the complete cause of gravity, which George Musser replied, oh, no, not at all. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he doesn't know yeah.
No. So as soon as you say the term gravity, you immediately invoke a cause, whether you like it or not, right?
I'm trying to think. I'll have to watch it, but I'm just thinking, did it go over his head? Because if we say gravity is not a force, the ball earthers, they're going to say, well, it is a force. Thinks for. I'm not arguing now. I'm just simply saying that what was his response to it's not a force, and you're saying that's his response. So I'm going to try and get a more in-depth response because we're saying it's not a force. And it seems that Craig didn't understand what he was listening to.
Well, George Musser said gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. So, I don't know, folks.
Yeah, he also said it's a fictitious force. So, it's a non-force force that you can think of a force being there when there is no force there because it's not a force. It's the biggest pile of double-speak nonsense you've ever heard.
I know, but do you get what I'm saying?
Spurs, you just gotta go watch
I understand,
Spurs.
but hold on. I'm saying that if I say to the ball earthers now, which I'm going to do shortly, gravity is not a force. You've heard your scientists say that it's not a force, it's not a real force, it's a fictitious force. They're going to say, I wanted to hear what Craig, his proper response. I think he kind of went over his head when that guy was saying it's not a force.
Well, that guy, what he was trying to say was it's not literally a force. So it's not, there's nothing literal happening, but you can use it in the way of math and equations and figuring out planets, all this other nonsense. But the main crux of the point is gravity isn't a force. That's the point.
Fall because of gravity. This is the point. It's not a force. Yeah.
Spurs, the video is not that long. Forget the Cliff Note version from the panel. Go watch it.
I will watch it. Yeah, I'll have to go watch it.
We haven't
But,
either.
I'm probably better than that. I'll probably have to speak with the Ball Earth to get, because what it seems to me, it went over Craig's head. Like you're saying to Craig, this is not a force, and he's like, well, yeah, well, we don't understand fully the cause. They're having a conversation. So
I see what you're saying, Spurs. So Anthony said it's not a force. Craig's gone, I'll go and get Musser to show just how wrong you are. And Musser's come on and said, it's not a force.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why I was listening to it. Like, what's going on? Am I crazy?
That's what I want. I wanted that. So Anthony was having a conversation with Craig, and then Craig was like, I'm going to get Musser to prove this is a force. And then he's like, no force. So what?
Yeah. Did you ever watch Red Dwarf? There's in the opening sequence of Red Dwarf, or the opening scenes, I should say, all of the crew die, and the main character's in suspended animation, and the computer lets him out of suspended animation, and the first words he says to him is, "Everybody's dead, Dave." And he starts listing off the people, the crew members. So you're trying to say Kachansky's dead? Everybody's dead, Dave, replies the computer. So he says, well, what about Smith? Is he dead? Smith's dead, Dave. Everybody's dead. Everybody's dead, Dave. Well, what about... And he keeps listing off people until it descends into him saying, he's dead, Dave. Everybody's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead, Dave. Because he just won't have it. And this is the same situation. It's not a force, Craig. You trying to tell me it's not a force?
Hey, Nathan, the problem he had when everyone goes and watches it again is when he used the word exert as to gravity being a force. And he used, I believe, the moon and the Earth, and then the sun and Mars. And then he said, well, actually, there's nothing in between those two objects. Now, I'm paraphrasing here, but this is what he said. He said, so it's not a force because we can't measure what's in between it. So, okay, it's magic. And that's where he went, because he just died on his own sword. So he had to go to magic.
Unbelievable. Yep. I can't wait.
Yep.
I can't wait to watch this. I'm just thankful.
You haven't watched this yet.
No, I've read your stuff and got you to read it out, and then we've discussed it without having watched it. We've told Arwin off for interjecting when he hasn't watched it. God damn him! How dare you, Arwin, not watch it when we've not watched it and we're commenting?
Too funny.
Yeah, it was such a big revelation. Yeah, I mean, if this is
I'm in sure I watched it twice before the show started. It was so good.
Yeah, the big problems were, wow, you're talking about an actual scientist. I mean, they think he's a scientist. I think he said he was a senior editor. He's been there for a while. I've known George Musser. I've read his bunch for or his stuff for many years. So he's been around the game for a while. But for an actual scientist, did you hear any let me ask you a question. Did you hear any science in the discussion whatsoever?
Nope.
Nope. None.
10th man?
Very interesting.
I'm
definitely going to watch.
I just want to find out from the people who actually watched it. He's not replying now. He's obviously stepped away. Oh well. I'll take your word for it, John. No science discussed whatsoever. What is his science acumen then? What's he actually done?
I have no idea. You know what? I listened to, and I only listened to half of this. He had a pretty good discussion so far, and I'll have to get back to it, on non-locality and quantum mechanics. I mean, he has some acumen there. He can speak to these things from the half or the quarter of the program that I watched. He was right on point. And like I said, the guy he's an amicable chap. I liked him. But He's
But he
clueless.
believes in magic.
When it he's
So
indoctrinated.
in other
It's
words,
just
John,
an
this guy has
indoctrination.
the. I'm sorry, John.
Now go ahead. You can step all over me again,
Oh God,
Vanilla. You do it every day, so
relax.
it's not special. Go ahead.
Jesus Christ. No, I would say, in other words, this guy has like at least the science background, the credibility, so that we can take his gravity is not a force nonsense seriously, coming from science, right?
Oh
Yeah, he's a spokesman. He stepped out. I mean, he took the step forward. I commend him for it, but I'll tell you, he's going to reap the whirlwind.
Does that
Tell you
sound like
George.
resting?
Sorry.
That sound like resting in peace to you, Chocolate?
Yeah.
I heard
exactly
it was
the
late
type of resting in peace I want him to do.
I'm sorry I was stepping on you, Chocolate. I heard that people on Twitter were driving him crazy last night. Now, I'm not a Twitter follower. I don't mess with it. I'm just telling you what I heard. I don't know if he's going to come back. So
people were what, driving Musser crazy?
yeah, they were. Well, anyone that can fog a mirror that listened to what he said, they're going to be commenting on Twitter to him, right? So I don't know. You might want to check his Twitter account.
Did you get any context? Was it angry ballers or flat earthers laughing at him? What's the score?
It was people holding his feet to the fire, saying, "What in the world is going on?"
Ballers,
and
then.
Some of them will be industry professionals as well, you know.
I don't know if it was ballers, just people. Listen, you could be a child and listen to what he said. It's doublespeak. Most people would get up after a couple minutes and say, "This guy's a lunatic."
This is recent, right? Yeah, like yesterday.
Yeah, last night.
Yeah, so they haven't even heard about it yet. Most of these ball earthers. So wait till they hear about this. I mean, I don't know how this is what I'm asking them. What was this? I know you've told me. I'm saying it's interesting to hear the response. You're saying the response is crazy. This is what I thought, because if he's saying it's not a force, this throws everything out the window. And I thought Craig would have at least.
That's exactly what happened. This reminds me of World War II, just before D-Day landings, where the Allies had all those inflatable tanks and airplanes to show the Germans how many, planes and tanks were there, but they weren't even real. And so here, imagine if George Patton came out and said, "Hey, by the way, Jerry's, those aren't real tanks and planes." Oops.
Yeah.
But you can treat them as real. Listen to the two major problems, right? These two statements. Gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. That's number one. Number two, the thing is about Newton's law, you can't take it literally. What in the world is that?
Craig should have asked him, if it's not a force, what is it?
Now, wait a second. If we can't take it literally, do we take it metaphorically?
Exactly. That's what I'm asking. If it's not this, then what is it? This is what we should
right. There isn't anything. It's bollocks, Spurs. That's what it is. Bollocks, magic, nonsense, not to be taken literally, according to this man.
The problem with the show that Craig did with George Musser is that if he would have challenged George Musser, it would have been like Anthony challenging George Musser, and Craig couldn't have that. So he let the show keep recording. And then, of course, in respect to Musser, he had to put it out. But he didn't like any of it.
Hey, and anyone that comes on the show, hold on a second. This has deeper ramifications. Anyone comes on the show and states any equations, we have to ask them if we need to take them literally.
No, that would be retracted. He will say he didn't mean that, and he wasn't. It was taken out. You watch. They're not going to allow this guy to say gravity is not a force.
What are you talking about? Yeah, I mean, the bottom line here is they're screwed. It was already being used. We were already citing him anyway, and the last refuge was to call him in and basically discredit himself. That's why I said all along, he's not going to come on and disagree with his own sentiments published. You've got to be joking. He's not going to chuck his career on the fire for this guy. No, he's just going to come out and say what he says. And that's precisely what he's done. Well, we already knew that he pisses in the face of their narrative being the baller's narrative, not the narrative. He's actually spouting the narrative. And what is the narrative? It's magic. That's what he's saying, not to be taken literally. A fictitious force. Well, okay, like a force in Narnia is fictitious. Yeah? We've been saying it all along, Spurs. The fact that this is the death throes, this is their last attempt to debunk something from within their narrative, a hostile source that's pissing in the face of what they believe. They believe in this fictitious force. And it's been made clear by one of their own priests. Not real.
It feels to me that they had to. It feels like they've had to say this now, or it has to come out. And like I said, this seems to have gone straight over Craig's head, but everyone else, red flags have been raised. So, what, I mean, again, who would say this if every scientist says gravity is a force, and now they're saying that it's not a force. Well, what is it then? What is it?
If you ask me, Spurs, if I had to argue ad populum, I would argue that the actual scientists, without quotation marks around them, probably know the Earth is flat and not spinning, and that space is bollocks. They probably know it. They probably know there's a God. They probably know all that stuff. The actual scientists. The rest of them are just brainwashed pretender clowns. That's that's my, very generalised, probably get me a load of stick opinion.
I'm just shocked. I'm a little shocked on their part to think, well, they're never going to allow this. I'm not saying that whether we agree or disagree, but I can't wait.
That's why, as I was watching it, I was literally like, this can't be like a win.
It's already part of the narrative. It's already part of it. The fact that we've unpicked the narrative and they've gone, no, we'll have an answer to it. Well, no, it's been unpicked from within the narrative. So, shock horror, they can't piece it back together again. And the person that we've unpicked it with and cited just backs the unpicking because that's the narrative. It's unbelievable. It's shocking. But within their own narrative, it undoes itself. Yes, that's right. And they won't accept that? That's the problem from the outset. Their non-acceptance of reality versus reification of mathematics. That's the overall problem. It's not that this one instance... Hold on, I'm in the middle of a speech, Spurs. Fuck's sake.
Sorry, it's just...
Yeah.
He was on a roll, let him go!
So they have had this problem from the outset. Their problem of reifying models and believing in mathematics over reality. This one single instance where there's an entire violation of non-contradiction within the narrative being laid out for them bare. It won't make any difference, Spurs. That's why I say you're on a fool's errand trying to save these people or convert them or convince them. And you see a success as the son of an astronaut saying he's not 99% certain. Well...
Yeah, that's insane.
Yes,
Did he really say that though? Like, he's the son of the astronaut guy. Like, Scott
You'd be surprised at the nonsense that comes out of that dork's mouth.
I didn't even think about that.
Just picture what he actually is, Spurs. He's the dorky son whose dad lies through his back teeth to him all day long about space being real.
He likes to talk about his father, though, so we don't really get into it too much. But...
It's on record. It's not like it's not public what his dad says, Spurs. His dad's not just brainwashing his own kid. Yeah, this is why I don't give two shits if he's got an objection to me saying this. His dad brainwashed the world with his shit, Spurs. The fact that he lied to his own kid is nothing to him. Yeah, absolutely nothing to this son of an astronaut. Yeah, that he's been lied to. And he's prepared to perpetuate that lie. Well, it's not just him that's being lied to. It's everybody. So this guy, the astronaut himself, is not in the slightest bit concerned about lying to his son. The son, as John puts it, just some dorky kid who goes, yeah, space. Oh, that's a nice shuttle. Thank you, Daddy. That's all that M. Scott Beach has done. Just a
but it is his dad, and his dad probably told him. And if you're a kid, you're going to believe what your dad tells you.
Like all of us, Spurs. That we're all lied to by this man's father. Is that what you mean?
No, but I'm just saying, if we were told, if your dad says you're an you're going to have to This is why we don't really talk
Well,
about.
he's just gonna have to get over it like
That's
Santa
what
Claus.
happens. This is the tip of the
feel,
spear.
though, for
I
these
can't believe
people,
this.
right?
You're going to get me angry really quick, Spurs, and if you stop me from talking, you're going to piss me off even quicker. This is the tip of the spear, the nub of the lie, the very person whose lips move and lies come out about this narrative. Yeah? Now, you're saying, oh, but if it's his dad lying to him and you're a little boy, no, the whole world is subject to it by proxy from their fathers as a direct result of people like that astronaut. They are at the tip of the spear, and you're arguing against me and saying, oh, it's justifiable because he was only a little boy. No. The fact that he's a bonehead, like everybody who doesn't see through this lie, who argues in this arena, just because he's the same as all the other gem pandas and curved waters and other boneheads who fight against it, just means he's just the same stupid level as the rest of them. The fact that his dad was the arbiter of the lie makes me absolutely outraged in the same way as anybody else who I know is at the tip of the spear when it comes to the actual lie itself. Well, you know, to get away from that, don't watch it. Don't try at any cost to engage with it because it makes my blood boil. It's like the people who know they've been lied to and go back to the liar, well, you're just a fool. Just detach yourself from these lying assholes. But when they come into our arena, then they deserve everything they get. Especially people like M. Scott Veach. He's in this arena. He's like the Charleses and the other people that make my blood boil. If they're in any way claiming to have an ounce of intelligence and are in this argument and have the counter arguments put to them, but give their normal hand wave dismissals and crap rebuttals, then they deserve what they get. And if you're part of a family that perpetuates this lie, you deserve ridicule. You should be highlighted. You know, these are the people in the argument that we're debunking. There's no way you're ever going to get away with fighting for their cause. Oh, so what? Because he's directly involved with the liars themselves, he deserves some mercy? No. He's here perpetuating it right now. 99% not certain. We are absolutely and unequivocally on a flat stationary plane, and he's only 99% certain about the stuff that he's bullshitting about. Well, no, that doesn't wash with me.
Hey, Nathan, you said tip of the spear, and that resonates with me. So Spurs, we're in the front line with the tip of the spears. Bullets are coming at us, and we're sending bullets of truth to them. You don't have time to talk with people who are shooting bullets, lies, at the bullets of truth, to sit there and think we're in the chow lines 10 miles behind, just talking about what's happening 10 miles ahead of us. This is war here. For the minds of men, this is war.
They're shooting marshmallows, man. They're shooting marshmallows, dude. This war was over in 2015. This is barely palpable background noise that we're dealing with here.
Wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You summed it up better on Ballbusters, John. The problem we haven't got is that, you're right, they are firing bloody marshmallows. Their arguments are crap and debunkable at every corner. But when you get flat earthers conceding their crap arguments, that's where the problem lies. When people don't realise where the fallacy begins and argue in the reification fallacy model, or allow them to reverse the burden of proof, all of these things are the main issue, because then it seems like the argument's got some sort of legs to it, or they're inside the fallacy in the first instance. This is something that I want to stamp out over the next short as possible period of time, because every single time someone argues about bloody rockets being able or not able to work in space, it drives me up the wall. So all that does is serve their ends. They're going to get their message across. Space is real, right? We're arguing about whether or not the ISS, is it actually in space or not? Well, that's totally irrelevant to the point. Space isn't real. You're arguing about stuff in Narnia. But that actual argument helps their cause. That's what's stopping us. That's what's holding us back. You know, the last Ballbusters 10, moving Flat Earth forward, or moving FE forward, I think I titled it, is precisely that. It's an address to the Flat Earthers. The people who come out here don't understand the arguments and don't appreciate that the people on the flip side of this coin have heard the counter arguments, not just 10 times, the number that, the magic 10, for it to finally sink in. They've heard it 100 times, and they still give their hand wave dismissals. They still lie to themselves. They still hold two positions mutually exclusive at the same time, and that will never change. But as 10th Man says, we're on the battle lines. Well, when you get to an admiral, somebody who's actually formulating the nonsense, disseminating it throughout the ranks, someone like M. Scott Veatch, they should be put on the pedestal and burnt. Not, defending the fact that the way he was deceived in the first instance is when he was a little boy. Well, who cares? I don't care. Full-grown adult lying to our faces and disseminating the lie amongst other people and sending them on to go and disseminate it further in the face of 100 rebuttals that they don't address and obfuscate. They're all being trained up by these people, these assholes who lie to us. They're the ones that aren't being addressed correctly. Now, if they weren't addressed at all, they'd die in a little corner in erectile dysfunction. But they get addressed, they get discussed, they get argued with, and they get arguments that are crap. Or they buy into their arguments, or argue in the narrative, beg the question. It just drives me at the wall. That's what's holding us back. Because they're firing marshmallows. Half the time they're firing blanks. We've got great ammunition. And what do? We hear a blank and throw ourselves onto the floor. It's just insane.
Yep, you got it. Good analogy. Exactly.
Well, George Musser gave you the first victory with Narnia. He admitted it's Narnia.
And let's not forget that, what's his dickhead name? Mick West also admitted that R is a presupposed. So if we presuppose R and we admit gravity's not a force, the fuck these guys?
Toe tags all over the place.
What you need, Nathan, is a picture of a toe tag on a dead patient in a hospital, and then that should be the thumbnail for today's show, with Musser written on it, or heliocentrism.
Yeah, talking of toe tags, there's a guy, I think his name might even be Craig as well, who talks, he's got like a northern accent, and he came on and talked about Barrow in Finesse, modelled it, and then said it was very interesting that you couldn't see it on the model. Do you remember that guy?
Yes.
Can you remember his toe tag number? Because I can't find it. Something to think about. I don't want to leave it on this dead air and rounding out with a rubbish point, but just try and find that guy's toe tag number. So this has got a bit of context for the people watching on Nathan Oakley. A toe tag number is the Flat Earth debate show that these people who now scatter themselves amongst spin-off shows from this one, I'm not going to pepper it with anything other than what it is. So the people who frequent the spin-off Flat Earth debates have got a toe tag number, and that would be the number of the debate that they've come on, been absolutely obliterated, have the same argument smashed that they've had smashed 100 times probably before, but they've given a hand wave dismissal and got away with it. Or, like we've just detailed, had a flat earther buy into the bloody argument and argue within the fallacy that they've used. But in any event, that's a toe tag is now the analogy being given to it. So your flat earth toe tag number is number 632 or something like that. But I just don't know that particular guy's toe tag number. Is there any points that you guys want to add before I actually round out this show? Because I'm going to round it out.
Yeah, hang on, don't round it out just yet. I'm making a toe tag picture. I want to know what today's debate number was.
Okay, it was number this. Well, there's two. So the one where we concisely talked about George Musser is going out in on this channel, Nathan Oakley, at 6 p.m. UK, which is in 3 minutes. But obviously, this is going to go out at about 9 p.m.
So the first show was 800 and what?
40.
This show now, the one we are talking on, is 841.
Yeah, I know, I get that. So what's the name on the toe tag for today? Is the name on the toe tag heliocentrism, Musser, fight the flat earth, or what? It's got to be fight the flat earth, hasn't it?
All of the above.
I would get a quote from George Musser and just put the quote up.
Well, do you want to know what I called the show? I called it George Musser, Imagine Gravity.
I like that. Imagine Gravity.
So, if what are we better doing? Are we better pinning this against Musser, pinning it against heliocentrism, or pinning it against fight the flat earth? Because if we pin it against fight the flat earth, we can kill two birds with one stone.
I think it's fight the flat earth because he's the one that claimed George Musser was saying gravity is a force.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You should call it Beyond the Imaginary Force.
What? Who cares? Why are you so obsessed with this fight the flat earth, dude?
Because we can kill two birds with one stone with it.
To nobody.
If anything, like we said before, we should thank him for getting this idiot George to come out here and say this bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd say go after the head of the snake.
Yeah, give him a shout out. Poor little sod.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'm just saying we need to christen this and like take ownership of it. But I'm gonna do fight the flat earthers in these letters because it's 4 big letters. It fits better on the toe tag I'm doing. You'll see. You'll see. I'll send it to you on Skype. I want you to use this as the thingy, Nathan.
Well, they did use the term snapping the wand.
Okay, I thought you were presenting it. I stuck your screen up for a second. I don't know what messages you're
I will do. I haven't finished making it yet.
Okay, well, I'm going to round out in a minute.
No, don't. Just hang fire a sec.
How long will it take me about half an hour to make
this should be
thumbnail.
like a mega show.
This is going to be this is going to be a bumper mega after show. Already up to 3 hours. I was hoping to round it out nicely on 3 hours, but clearly I'm not going to get my way.
Not on this one occasion, no. This is a bit weird.
3+ hour show. It's taking the mick.
I've just moved it, so I need to rotate it by 270 degrees.
You're not presenting your screen, so we can't even see what you're doing, so this is intensely boring. It could have been a really nicely rounded out show, concise, to the point. Killing me. You're killing me here.
Oh yeah, one little point before you round out while Anthony's doing it. Anthony, I heard you say again that the ballers need gravity for the atmosphere argument. So you don't have to answer. I heard what you said. Let me say this for the 25,678th time. I don't care if you give them Newtonian gravity, Cavendish gravity, Einsteinian gravity, Peter Tulip's gravity. You could give it all to them. They can have them all at full force. It is not going to affect entropy 1 iota. Is this clear?
And with that, I will say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who joined us in the Nathan Oakley premiering stream for this super mega bumper after show. Obviously, a massive thank you to all who hit the super chat, hopefully. And, of course, for tuning in, smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Also, a massive, enormous thank you to everybody in the debating panel for making today's after show possible. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!